Wrigley's Spearmint Chewing Gum. The refreshing, delicious treat that gives you chewing enjoyment presents for your listening enjoyment John Lund as
Johnny Dollar.
Hanley Conrad, Johnny.
Oh, hello, Mr. Conrad. How are you?
Fine. Can you take a job?
No trouble at all.
Well, this is it. On Thursday of last week, we got a call from the New York police. They'd confiscated about $100,000 worth of rare gems. A man named Wells had been murdered, and they found the jewels in the water pipe beneath the sink.
Your company insure Wells?
No. One of our clients in Europe was robbed about 3 months ago.
The same jewels?
We think so, but we can't be positive. They've been removed from their settings, and some of the larger ones have been recut. The police are holding Mrs. Wells, and she claims the jewels are rightfully hers. She says neither she or her husband knew they were hidden in the water pipes. Well, unless it can be proved the jewels were stolen, she's just liable to end up with them.
Possession, huh?
Yeah. It's a funny one. When can you start?
I've started.
The makers of Wrigley's Spearmint Chewing Gum bring you John Lund in another adventure of the man with the action-packed expense account, America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
For refreshing taste plus chewing enjoyment, treat yourself to delicious Wrigley's Spearmint Gum. When your mouth and throat feel hot and dry, a stick of Wrigley's Spearmint gives you quick, long-lasting refreshment. The lively, full-bodied spearmint flavor cools your mouth and freshens your taste. The chewing itself helps keep your throat pleasantly moist. Best of all, you can chew and enjoy refreshing Wrigley's Spearmint Gum almost any time and any place. Keep a package handy right in your purse or pocket so you can chew a stick whenever you want it. For refreshing taste plus chewing enjoyment, treat yourself to delicious Wrigley's Spearmint Gum. Millions enjoy it, and you will, too.
Expense account submitted by Special Investigator Johnny Dollar to Home Office, World Insurance and Indemnity Company, Hartford, Connecticut. The following is an accounting of expenditures during my investigation of the Stanley Price Matter. Expense account item 1, $21.85. Train fare and incidentals between Hartford and New York City after receiving from you the necessary information concerning the case. I arrived in New York at 10 o'clock that morning and went directly to police headquarters, where I looked up Captain Fred D., in charge of robbery detail.
Sit down, Mr. Dollar.
Oh, thanks.
Glad to help you any way I can.
Well, if it isn't too much trouble, I'd like the whole thing from the beginning.
Sure. Last Thursday, we got a call from a man named Price, Stanley Price. Said if we came to 956 East 114th Street, we'd find $100,000 in stolen jewels. Then there was a shot, and the line went dead. When we got there, we found the dead man.
Wells?
Yeah, Robert Wells, shot twice in the head.
You're holding the wife?
Not since 8 o'clock this morning. We've got no evidence. No murder weapon, nothing. And, of course, she swears she knows nothing about it. Your company thinks the jewels belong to one of their clients.
Yeah, but they've been taken out of their settings and recut. Such a good job, they can't be identified.
Only one thing that ties in. Wells returned from Europe last Tuesday. Been over there for about 3 months. The robbery was abroad.
Yeah. Got anything on the man who gave you the tip?
Stanley Price? No, nothing much. We know a Stanley Price. We think it's the same man. He's small-time hood. Picked up a couple of times. No convictions. Been making book lately, but we can't prove it. Can't find him anywhere. We got an APB out on him.
And you released Mrs. Wells?
Yeah.
She living in the same place?
Well, she went back to the apartment. She's still there. We got it staked out.
Well, seems to me the first thing to do is find Stanley Price.
We'd like to.
I've got an old friend that knows all about small-time bookmakers. I'm going to drop by and have a talk with him.
Anyone I know?
Oh, probably. But he'd be hurt if I mentioned his name.
Hope you make out.
Now, what about the wife?
You going to see her?
After I take care of a few details. What's she like?
You won't mind a bit.
I left headquarters, checked into a hotel, then made arrangements to rent a car. At 12:30, I was pulling up in front of a brownstone in the village where an old friend lived. His name is Henri Duval, abstract painter and lover of Paris. Mutuals. Henri!
Who is it?
Come on, Henri, open up.
Go away.
It's Johnny Dollar, Henri.
I don't trust no one. My landlord is a man of many voices.
I'm not your landlord.
You remember my... Scout Honor?
Cross my heart.
Johnny, mon ami, Johnny.
I haven't much time. I need a favor.
Asseyez-vous. Alors, for you, a portrait costs only $50.
No pictures, Henri.
No pictures?
Ever heard of a man named Price? Stanley Price?
No.
Paid your rent?
Same answer.
I have a small $10 bill here.
Mon ami, you would attempt a lowly bribe?
Well, what do you know? Here's another 10.
You know, I would ask you to stay for lunch, but Greenbaum will not even let me look in his delicatessen window anymore.
25?
Bien. But I only do it because I have the love for Greenbaum.
Show a little interest in Stanley Price for a minute.
Stanley Price, here. Peasant.
He's a bookmaker?
Of a sort. He owes me $11.80. Mary Ann in the 8th at Hialeah by 8 lengths. Mon Dieu, such a filly.
Henri. Stanley Price.
Ah, oui, the low life.
Where can I find him?
Je ne sais pas.
Henri?
But it is the truth.
Scout's honor?
But of course. If I knew where the peasant was, would I not collect my $11.80? But of course, Scout's honor. Look, you see?
You're only holding up one finger.
Le Cub Scout.
Oh. When was the last time you heard from him?
When he took my $2 that wins for me the $11.80. And then he was in the fish business.
Fish business?
Ah, oui. I know because he brought me 2 halibut, which I promptly made into a magnificent bouillabaisse for my landlord. Terrible.
The stew?
No. Just the fish. Believe me, those 2 halibut were so old, they remembered Jonah.
Was he selling fish?
No. He was not selling fish. He was catching them. He had a boat. When I went down to collect my $11.80, the boat was not there.
Where did he keep the boat, Henri?
A disgusting place. It was called, Schooner Landing. A place like that simply should not be. Do you know why? Stinks.
Well, thanks, Henri.
But you are leaving.
Yeah, you can unlock the door.
Wait. Alors, bonjour, mon ami.
Vive la France. I climbed back into the rented coupe and drove to the waterfront where I finally located Schooner Landing. A lot of small boats were tied up in slips, and an old man sat outside a shack at the head of the dock, sunning himself. Hello.
Hello?
You run this landing?
Yep.
You know a man named Price?
Stan Price?
Yep.
Yep.
Seen him lately?
Nope.
When was the last time you saw him?
You're a cop?
Nope.
That's too bad.
Why?
He owes me a week's rent on a boat.
Skip out?
Yeah?
Understand he was fishing down here. That right?
Yep.
How long ago did he rent the boat?
2 weeks ago.
When did he skip out?
About a week.
Anything unusual about Things that he did?
Well, he weren't no fisherman.
Why do you say that?
And he didn't know the first thing about it. Fishing, that is. When he first rented my boat, he used to go out for 2 or 3 hours, come back with a couple of fish. He didn't have no gear to speak of, no live bait. Just a pole.
Well, didn't that seem kind of strange?
Weren't none of my business. He had a license.
You mean a regular fishing license or a commercial?
Yep.
Commercial?
Yep.
Did he do anything unusual the last day he was down here?
Well, don't know. He went out about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, was back here about 6:30. Only thing unusual about that, it's a funny time to do fishing.
What date was that?
Week ago, yes. Oh, no, wait, no. It's a week ago tomorrow, Wednesday.
Oh. Thanks, Pop.
You sure you ain't a cop?
Yep.
G-man?
Nope.
Don't say no more than you have to, do you?
Nope.
Bye, Sonny.
I left Schooner's Landing and made a beeline to the Bureau of Licenses, where I located the fishing license that had been issued to Stanley Price. It had his picture on it, and the clerk allowed me to take it. I thanked him, then climbed back into my car and headed for 956 East 114th Street and Mrs. Wells.
Yes?
My name is Dollar.
What can I do for you?
I get tongue-tied when I stand in a hall.
You want in?
That's it.
Why?
Ever see this picture before, Mrs. Wells?
Come in. The man in the picture, who is he?
Don't you know?
I've only seen him once. Oh, won't you sit down?
Thanks. Where did you see this man, Mrs. Wells?
He came to see my husband. He was leaving just as I arrived.
Your husband say who he was?
No, mentioned something about some business he had with him.
Well, if it makes any difference to you, this man in the picture is Stanley Price.
Oh, one the police are after. The man they think killed my husband.
The man who called and told the police about the jewels your husband hid in the water pipe.
You're from the police?
No, I'm an insurance investigator.
Oh.
Your husband just got back from Europe a week ago, didn't he?
Yes?
By boat?
Yes.
What day did he arrive?
Last Wednesday. You know, I don't think I've ever seen a man with such attractive eyes. They're really very unusual. Nice hair, too. So curling.
I'll stop back when I've got more time and we'll straighten it out.
Leaving?
Yes, I'm going home and have another talk with Dad.
Well, in case I might want to get in touch with you...
I'm staying at the Shelton. Oh, by the way, what time did your husband's boat dock?
5 o'clock.
Thanks.
Sure. Say hello to Dad.
I finally managed to get down to my car and drive back to the hotel. I called Lieutenant D and briefed him with what had happened to date. Then I went downstairs to get some lunch. As I crossed the lobby...
Don't turn around.
What is this?
Just keep looking straight ahead. I want something.
I was just going to have some lunch.
It'll keep.
Will it?
I haven't got much time. Give me the picture.
Oh.
Let's have it.
And if I don't?
Then you get shot right in the lobby of the Shelton Hotel.
Friends, no matter what kind of work you do, it's a real help to chew delicious Wrigley's Spearmint Gum right while you're working. When you're warm or tired, for instance, a lively, full-bodied spearmint flavor is really refreshing. It helps keep your mouth and throat feeling cool and moist. Chewing on that smooth, good-tasting piece of Wrigley's Spearmint makes the time pass more pleasantly, too. It seems to make your work go smoother and easier. Keep a package or two of Wrigley's Spearmint chewing gum handy all the time. Enjoy chewing Wrigley's Spearmint while you're working and at other times. That's Wrigley's Spearmint chewing gum. Healthful, refreshing, delicious. And now, with our star, John Lund, we bring you the second act of Yours Truly, Johnny Dollar.
Let's have it.
Well, it's the only one of me on a bare rug facing east. What'll Mom say?
The picture of Stanley Price.
Okay.
That's being smart. Now, you stay put. Count 10 before you turn around. Believe me, Dollar, I mean it. I'll kill you if you move before 10.
You're being pretty silly, Price. They'll pick you up sure.
I don't think so.
Oh, by the way, Henri Duval says to thank you for the 1180.
1180? Oh, yeah. Tell him it was nothing.
It sure wasn't.
Start counting.
1, 2, button my shoe. 3, 4, close the door. 5, 6, pick up 6. I counted to 20, just to be on the safe side. Any guy who'd stick a gun in my back in broad daylight in the middle of a hotel lobby was pretty desperate. I finished counting, put in a call to Henri Duval, then headed for the robbery division and Captain D.
Right in the hotel.
Yeah, not 10 minutes ago. I had that picture of Stanley Price from the fishing license.
No, I don't get it. What's so important about that picture? Certainly not the only one of Price. We got mugs on him in the file.
I got a big hunch. My boss said it was important to prove those jewels were stolen or have somebody positively identify them. That if this wasn't done in a certain amount of time, the jewels would automatically go to Mrs. Wells.
Well, that's right, under normal circumstances. If we couldn't prove they were stolen or that they belonged to someone else, we'd have to turn them over. But there are enough extenuating circumstances. The killing of Wells, the way the jewels were hidden in the pipes, a robbery in Europe, and Wells' subsequent return a short time later. We can hold on to them for a long time.
Don't.
What?
Do me a favor and turn them over to Mrs. Wells. I think it'll bust this thing wide open.
That's a big order.
Look, the guy who stuck me up in the lobby knew I had the picture. Somebody had to tell him where I was staying. Only people who knew that were you, Mr. Conrad from my company, and Mrs. Wells.
All right, Mrs. Wells told Price.
It wasn't Price.
It wasn't?
Not unless he paid Henri, that is a friend of mine, $11.80 in the last couple of hours.
Maybe he did.
He didn't. I checked.
Look, I'm sorry, but I'm confused.
Yeah, so am I a little. But it figures something like this. Wells arrived last Wednesday by boat in the afternoon around 5.
That's right.
Stanley Price was being a fisherman then.
Okay.
He'd rented a boat, taken out a fishing license. The day that Wells arrived, Price went out in the afternoon, stayed about 2 hours, came back, and then disappeared.
Then Wells shows up with a sink full of jewels.
Right. Probably had him on the boat. Avoided customs by dropping them overboard, and Price picked them up.
Yeah, and Price could have killed him for them.
Oh, it doesn't make sense. Wells was killed in his own apartment.
Yeah?
If Price picked up the jewels out of the water, why go to Wells, give him the jewels, let him hide them in the sink, kill him, leave without getting them, and then call the police?
I'm convinced.
Another thing. The pickup was pretty carefully planned. Wells couldn't have done it all by himself. He was in Europe. Somebody here had to plan it. Someone who knew Wells had the jewels.
The wife.
Yeah, looks that way.
And the guy who stuck you up wasn't Price. Maybe there's a third party.
Yeah, could be, but I doubt it. I'd like to go down to the morgue and take a look at Wells.
Sure, I'll call him. Okay, Charlie.
Didn't help his face. How'd you get an identification?
A wife.
This isn't Wells.
It isn't?
This is Stanley Price.
You sure?
The picture on the fishing license. This is the same guy.
I'll have Mrs. Wells picked up.
And miss out on the big catch? Let me take the jewels over to her. It'll look official. Insurance company agent and everything. The captain was reluctant, but he agreed. We went back to headquarters, and he presented me with $100,000 in jewels. I left for Mrs. Wells' apartment, followed by 2 of New York's finest. The captain was agreeable, but cautious. The boys staked out across the street, and I went into the building and up to the apartment.
Hello.
I spoke with Dad.
Was his advice sound?
Oh, he just said there were bound to be days like this.
Then come in. Is this going to be business?
I come bearing gifts.
Oh?
I'm afraid the police can't keep these any longer.
The jewels?
Mm-hmm. There you are.
I don't understand.
Well, there's a little law after a certain
But
time.
the last time I talked with the police, they said they could impound them until my husband's murder was cleared up.
Oh, afraid not.
You mean I just get them? No strings?
Not a one.
Mr. Dollar, sit down.
Sure.
Now, you work for the insurance company, don't you?
Uh-huh.
Well, my husband wasn't insured.
Oh, he should have been. Not that you need the money now, but just suppose you hadn't been lucky enough to have your sink stopped up with all those nice little jewels.
If my husband wasn't insured, why are you mixed up in this?
You really want to know?
Uh-huh.
My company thinks those jewels were stolen from one of our clients.
I just can't stop looking at your eyes. They're even bluer in this light.
Honey, get to it.
All right. I think something's real wrong.
Wrong?
I thought maybe you'd like to tell me what it's all about.
Well, you've got the jewels.
And what do you think I'm going to do with them?
Well, that's up to you, isn't it?
Your company thinks these jewels are stolen, and you're just turning them over to me.
Can't do anything else.
Mr. Dollar.
Johnny.
Mr. Dollar, it's too easy.
Disappointed?
Well, suspicious. I've been around a little while.
Somehow I guessed that.
And I think you're trying to put little Lois in a bind.
Really?
Yeah. And even if you've got the prettiest eyes in the whole wide world, I'm not going to let you.
You have something in mind?
Good night.
What? Oh! It landed right behind my right ear. I don't know what it was, but it was hard and it was cold. Whoever was on the other end of it had moved up behind the couch while Lois had kept me occupied. I went right to sleep and stayed that way for about 10 minutes. When I came to, I was all alone, except for a large swelling that was getting big enough to wear a hat. I stumbled downstairs and looked for the 2 policemen on stakeout, but they disappeared too. So I found a phone booth and put in a call to Captain D.
They're tailing the wife. Stillman just checked in and said they were with her downtown. She's doing some shopping on Fifth Avenue.
She's a decoy. She's leading your boys away from Wells.
Where are you?
In the Wells apartment. I got slugged about 10 minutes ago. Wells must have been in the apartment the whole time. After he put me to sleep, the wife probably left by the front door and led your boys downtown while Wells left by the back way.
Huh.
You can bet he's got the jewels. He'll try to get out of town.
I'll have every exit from the city covered.
Okay, but he's smart enough to know that. When you're through, meet me at Schooner's Landing.
Schooner's Landing?
Yeah. My guess is Wells is going to take a boat ride. It was about 4:30 in the afternoon when I arrived at Schooner's Landing. The old man was walking up from the slips.
Hello, Sonny.
Pop, which boat was Stanley Price renting?
That one? Just getting ready to go out. I just got through gassing her up. Fella paid me Price's back rent. Wait, there's something wrong?
Bob, Dollar.
Good afternoon, Mrs. Wells.
Bob!
Drop the gun, Dollar. Drop it.
The police are right behind me.
Okay. Sit down.
You taking him?
He's an insurance man. He's going to be our insurance. If the police try anything, I'm going to shoot you, Dollar. Hold the gun on him while I get us out of here.
I thought you were shopping on Fifth Avenue.
I was. Those 2 policemen that were following me probably still think I'm trying on lingerie.
That's what happens when the police force hires gentlemen.
How's your head?
Uncomfortable.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll bet.
Boys,
Yeah?
take over the wheel. Keep it headed right for the breakwater light. Know anything about boats?
They float.
It's going to be a long ride. It'll be pretty rough when we hit open water.
You're Robert Wells, aren't you?
That's right. How'd you figure it?
I saw Price in the morgue. Your wife identified him as you, but the picture on the fishing license showed he was Price. You didn't know whether I was working with the law or not, but you had to get the picture to give yourself enough time to get out of the country.
I knew the damage it could do if it got to the police.
Why did you kill Price?
He wanted 50% to fence the stuff. I said no and then caught him phoning the police. Had to kill him.
So you put your papers on him and told your wife to identify him as you.
The jewels were in the pipes under the sink. I knew the law would be there in 10 minutes, so I had to take a chance they wouldn't find him.
Bob, there's a boat coming up pretty fast.
So what?
I hate to spoil the party, but I think it's the Coast Guard.
Bob!
Shut up and stay with that wheel.
But it looks like the police.
Shut up! All right, Dollar. Get up on the bow.
Oh, I'll get seasick.
Move. I want him to see you.
Look, I don't swim very well. How about if I take this life preserver?
Put it down. Sure.
Bob!
Stay right there, honey.
Stop your boat! Heave to!
Better do like the man says.
Come on, Dollar, stop that boat!
All right. Keep your barnacles on. Expense account item 2. $8.75 for a big dinner that made up for the lunch I'd missed. After that, I went back to the hotel and got myself 12 hours of a good night's sleep. Expense account item 3, the $25 I'd bribed Henri Duval with. The last time I saw him, he was in Greenbaum's delicatessen, spending the money with his arm around Greenbaum. They were both smiling. Expense account items 4 and 5, $42.15, car rental and hotel bill. Item 6, $15.65, train fare and incidentals back to Hartford. Expense account total, $113.40. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Remember, friends, for refreshing taste plus chewing enjoyment, treat yourself to delicious Wrigley's Spearmint Chewing Gum. The taste of fresh spearmint is cooling and delightful, and there's lots of it in every stick of Wrigley's Spearmint Gum. It freshens your mouth, helps keep your throat moist, and sweetens your breath besides. You'll enjoy the good chewing, too, because Wrigley's Spearmint is so smooth and pleasant to chew on. There's nothing else quite like it. Next time you're at the store, stop at your friendly merchant's display of chewing gum and get a few packages of good-tasting Wrigley's Spearmint Gum. Always keep some handy for refreshing taste plus chewing enjoyment. That's Wrigley's Spearmint Chewing Gum. Healthful, refreshing, delicious. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, brought to you by Wrigley's Spearmint Chewing Gum, stars John Lund in the title role and was written by Blake Edwards with music by Eddie Dunstetter. Featured in tonight's cast were John Stevenson, Kenny Delmar, Jay Novello, Howard McNear, and Mary Shipp. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, is produced and directed by Jaime Del Valle. The makers of Wrigley's Spearmint Chewing Gum hope you enjoyed tonight's story of Johnny Dollar and that you're enjoying delicious Wrigley's Spearmint Gum every day. This is Charles Lyon, inviting you to join us again next week at this same time when from Hollywood, John Lund returns as
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
This is the CBS Radio Network. For your listening enjoyment, John Lund as
Johnny Dollar.
Philip James, Johnny.
Oh, hello, Mr. James.
Got a job for you.
I'm available.
This is an arson case. We insure the business of a Mr. Lester Matson, plastics. Old factory burned down. $700,000. Police found definite evidence that rules out accident.
How was it set?
Some kind of high-octane fuel.
Any suspects? No, not yet. Lieutenant Ridgway at New York headquarters will fill in the details. When can you leave?
Oh, a couple of hours.
Fine. Good luck, Johnny.
Mind if I break in here for a moment to say a few words? Just the other day, I was having lunch with a group of newspaper reporters. We were talking about the government and what goes into its operation when a thought struck me. It's a funny thing, I said. They call one branch of the government the State Department when it handles all of our foreign affairs. Can any of you fellows explain that? Well, one of the reporters who writes political news piped up and said, actually, the State Department does more than handle foreign affairs. It also publishes all of the laws that have been passed by Congress and issues all the passports and visas for anyone traveling outside the United States. Well, just then the waitress brought us our coffee, and she entered the conversation. Don't forget, she said, if you're ever on a quiz show, you can maybe win a trip to the moon by telling them that the State Department has the job of making sure the Great Seal of the United States doesn't get lost. And it acts sort of like a governmental Emily Post, too. While she was making out our checks, she added this bit of information. Did you ever hear of the Division of Protocol? That's part of the State Department, too. It's the outfit that makes sure foreign diplomats who visit America get introduced the way they should and get seated in the right places at official dinners and things like that. Well, after she gave us all that information, we tipped her and went back to work. And now I think it's time we got back to our program.
Expense account submitted by Special Investigator Johnny Dollar to Home Office, Columbia All Risk Insurance Company, Hartford, Connecticut. The following is an accounting of expenditures during my investigation of the Lester Matson matter. Expense account item 1, $17.55, train fare and incidentals between Hartford and New York City. I arrived in New York, registered at a hotel, and rented a car, which I drove to police headquarters. Lieutenant Ridgway was a tall, nice-looking man with a pleasant smile and a firm handshake.
Glad to help you as much as I can, Mr. Dollar. Sit down.
Thanks, Lieutenant.
Now, how much do you know so far?
Only that the Matson plastic factory burned down.
Not all the way, but nearly.
And that you suspect arson.
Positively. We made our report to your company, Mr.
James.
Yeah.
He told me about the high-octane fuel.
Mm-hmm, and a 10-gallon can. The night watchman heard the explosion, but by the time he got there, the fire was out of control. He could see the can and the fuel burning. He could smell it, too.
No suspects?
No, not yet.
Any leads?
The owner.
You think he did it?
No, he couldn't have. He was with his daughter at a dinner party.
Then you think he had someone else?
No, I don't think so.
But you said he was a suspect.
No, I said I had a lead. He's it. Something wrong, Dollar. I don't know what it is. First, I just put it down to the natural behavior of a man who just lost his business. Later on, when I talked with him further, well, I can't really put my finger on it, but I think he's hiding something. He knows something about that fire. He's scared.
And that's it?
Yeah, that's it. I'm pretty sure he didn't have anything to do with it. He's too successful. Nice bank account, wonderful home, wonderful daughter.
Well, the factory was really worth a whole lot more than what he'll collect on the insurance, wasn't it?
Well, that's what your boss.
James.
Yeah, James. That's what he said. The assets of the business were in the millions.
Yeah.
Well, if anything, this will really be tough on Matson. Have to build again. Dyes, molds.
Well, I think I'll stop out and see him.
Yeah. Let me know what you think.
I'll do that. The Matson home was across the river in Jersey. A big white colonial with a long circular drive that led up to the front door. A butler showed me into a spacious study, and I was told Mr. Matson would be down shortly. While I waited, I walked around and cased some of the first editions on the bookshelves.
Oh.
Hello.
Hello, I'm Christine Matson.
I'm Johnny Dollar, Miss Matson. I'm waiting for your father.
Oh?
Yeah. I'm an insurance investigator.
Insurance investigator?
About the fire.
Oh, yes.
You have a beautiful house.
Well, thank you.
Beautiful. Wonderful collection of books.
Yes. I don't imagine one person could read them all. Not in a lifetime.
No, I suppose not.
Do you like to read, Mr.
Dollar.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so bad with names.
So am I. Yes, I like to read, but I don't get much time. Been playing tennis, huh?
Mm-hmm. I just got back. Do you?
Not anymore. I used to play a little.
Well, I guess I better get upstairs.
Nice meeting you.
It's nice meeting you. Will you be staying... will you be around for any length of time while you're investigating the fire?
Well, that's hard to say. I hope so.
Hello, Chris.
Oh, hi, Dad.
How was the game?
Fine.
Mr. Dollar?
Yes, sir.
I'm Lester Matson.
How do you do?
You two have met?
Yes.
Yes, I was just on my way upstairs. See you later, Dad. Goodbye, Mr. Dollar.
Goodbye.
Well, your company notified me you'd be coming down, Mr. Dollar. You have a seat. You're, an investigator.
That's right.
Well, the police have already made a pretty thorough investigation.
Yes, I've talked with Lieutenant Ridgway.
Well, I can't tell you any more than I've already told them.
You were at a party the night of the fire?
That's correct. It's all in the report.
With your daughter?
Yes.
When did you find out about the fire?
When I arrived home. Mr. Dollar, I explained to
That
you...
you've said everything to the police, yes.
That's right. There's absolutely nothing I can possibly add at this
Mr.
time.
Matson, you're insured with my company for a lot of money.
Hardly what I lost in the fire.
I'm aware of that. But I have a job to do, and this is an arson case.
That's what the police say.
A night watchman says so, too.
He could have been mistaken. In the excitement, he could very
Mr.
easily...
Matson, what difference does it make?
It makes a great deal of difference.
Your factory burned. You've suffered a considerable loss.
I certainly have.
I can understand how that would make a difference. But a fire's a fire. If you didn't have anything to do with it...
I most certainly did not.
Then why so much concern about whether it was deliberately set or not?
Well, wouldn't you be concerned if somebody deliberately set fire to one of your factories?
About the fire, yes, but buildings burn down all the time. Fires are started deliberately all over the country.
I am sure this one was an accident.
Well, accident or the work of a pyromaniac. If you're clear, you'll get the insurance.
You think this is the work of a pyromaniac?
Seems like a pretty reasonable assumption. But you're sure it was an accident?
Oh, I don't know. I just don't like the idea of a fire like that being started deliberately.
I admit it's a little frightening.
Yes. You have to understand, a business like mine, so many inflammables, it's a little terrifying to think someone would deliberately start a fire. Well, what if it had happened during working hours?
That's not very probable.
Well, I've read about fires in hotels. People burned to death, deliberately started by some madman.
Yes, the firebug would have a good chance in a hotel. He wouldn't be seen so easily. Most of the people in their rooms, and he could get in and out easily. And most of those fires are started during the night sometime. But a busy factory in the daytime isn't very likely.
Well, I sincerely hope you're right.
I'm just going by the records.
You see, I have 2 more plants. Let's hope I don't turn out to be the exception to the rule.
I doubt it. Now, if you don't mind, Mr. Matson, I've still got to make a full report to my company.
Oh, certainly. I'll give you all the information I can.
Lieutenant Ridgway had been right. Something was troubling Matson. Until I'd suggested the possibility of a firebug, he was determined to convince me the fire was simply an accident, and he'd been resentful of the impending interrogation. Then the pyromaniac angle had given him some kind of an out, because he'd relaxed immediately. While I questioned him about the details of the fire, he seemed actually cheerful, even resurrected a few old bromides that I politely chuckled along with. But he told me nothing I hadn't already learned from the lieutenant, so I thanked him, shook his hand at the front door, and climbed back into my car. As I drove off, I felt sorry I couldn't have seen the daughter again, because it was certainly a sight worth seeing again. And again. I arrived back at the hotel, went up to my room, and put in a call to Lieutenant Ridgway.
What'd you think?
Yeah, something's bothering him.
Yeah, I know, but what?
Did you ever mention the possibility of a firebug having been responsible for the fire?
To Matson?
Yeah.
No, I don't think I did.
Well, I mentioned it to him. and he liked it.
What do you mean?
Until I did, he was determined to call the whole thing an accident. When I suggested a pyro, he made a complete about-face. Oh, he was subtle about it, but he forgot the accident theory.
That right?
Yeah. He seemed actually relieved.
Oh. What do you think it means?
I don't know. It could mean he knows who started the fire. If he thought we were looking for a pyro and not some specific person that could incriminate him, that would account for his letting go of the accident theory.
I see. You agree with the pyro theory and hope we do the same. Oh, what could he gain? Financially, he ends up in a hole.
Yeah. Insurance doesn't figure.
Oh, no, he's loaded. Got all the money he needs.
And it's something else. Somebody started that fire, and I'm pretty sure Matson knows who and why.
Yeah, now all we've got to do is find the who and why.
Well, I don't mind working on the case for a while. Have you seen his daughter?
Yeah.
Maybe she started the fire.
Why would you do that?
She's the type that could. I just met her for a minute, and I'm still smoldering. The lieutenant suggested a stakeout for Lester Matson. I told him I'd check with him later, took the cold shower, changed, and went down to the hotel bar to freshen up a bit. It was about 4:30, and I was pretty fresh when a page came wandering through calling my name. He told me I was wanted on the phone. Johnny Dollar.
This is Christine Matson. Mr. Dollar?
Yes. Hello.
I found out where you were staying from your company.
Well, that's nice. Why did you find out where I was staying from my company?
But it's very important that I talk to you.
All right. Where are you?
I don't want to meet you at your hotel. I have to be very careful.
Well, so do I.
That's not what I mean. If certain parties saw me with you, my father's life would be in danger.
Is this about the fire?
Yes, it is. Would you meet me at the corner of 5th and 115th Street in a half hour?
Sure.
I'll be in a cab. I'll pick you up.
I'll be the guy with the fire extinguisher.
You know, many great men have attained the highest office in our land, the presidency of the United States. Can you guess the name of this man? He has been called a lawyer by profession, a fighter by choice, and a politician by force of circumstance. And he was outstanding in all three fields. In 1788, at the age of 21, he was appointed public prosecutor for the region which is now Tennessee. As president, he was the first to introduce the National Convention for the nomination of presidential candidates. During his campaign for the presidency, his opponents attempted to smear him by an unwarranted attack on his wife, Rachel, who never recovered from the ordeal and died just before her husband's inauguration. If you don't have his name by now, here's one more clue. During the Battle of New Orleans, as Major General of the Army, he accepted the help of the pirate Jean Lafitte. Who was he? Andrew Jackson, 7th President of the United States. His life is part of your American heritage.
And now, with our star, John Lund, we bring you the second act of Yours Truly, Johnny Dollar.
As long as the lovely Miss Matson was picking me up in a cab, I left the rented car behind and charged up expense account item 2. $1.65 for cab fare from the hotel to 5th and 115th Streets. It was getting dark by the time I arrived. I waited for about 10 minutes until Christine Matson's cab pulled up at the curb and she opened the door for me.
Go ahead, driver.
Well, good evening.
Is this a terrible inconvenience?
Oh, not a bit. Where are we going?
I just told him to drive around. Mr. Dollar, my father's being blackmailed.
In connection with the fire?
He had nothing to do with the fire, Mr. Dollar.
But he knows who did.
Yes. They burned the factory to frighten him, to make him pay the blackmail.
You mean someone's shaking him down?
Well, about a week ago, he was approached by 2 men. They demanded he pay them a certain percentage of the profits from his business. In return for the percentage, they guaranteed him protection.
So he didn't pay, and they set fire to the factory.
That's it.
Why didn't he go to the police?
Well, he was frightened.
Well, he couldn't have been too frightened if he refused to pay them.
He was frightened for me. He thought maybe he could bluff them by not paying, but he didn't want to take a chance and go to the police for fear they might really do something serious.
Losing $1 million business is pretty serious.
He tried to bluff them, and it didn't work. Now he's really frightened. He knows they mean business, and they've told him if the police ever find out, they'll do something a whole lot worse than just start a fire.
Do something to you?
That's what Dad's afraid of.
And you're not?
Of course I am.
Aren't you taking a pretty big chance telling me about it?
Well, you're not the police, and I have been very careful. I was hoping you could help without it being necessary to start a wide-open police investigation.
You're not giving the police much credit. If you'd told them the same story, they'd have kept it completely undercover.
Oh, I thought about it, but too many people would have to know about it. And then there's always the chance of someone saying something or a slip-up.
How do you know about all this?
Well, my father told me, of course.
Just like that? Daughter, darling, 2 men have been trying to blackmail me?
Don't be silly. He said nothing at first. He kept it from me. But you see, my father and I are very close, Mr. Dollar. We've never had any secrets. After the fire, when I saw how disturbed he was, I made him tell me.
Does he know you come to see me?
Oh, no. He made me promise not to tell anyone. Well, I just had to. He's agreed to pay the men, and you know what that means. Mr. Dollar, will you help?
Well, I'll do what I can, but it's going to be tough without your father's cooperation. And you'll never be safe until these men are caught.
He's afraid of what might happen before they're caught. Why, if they find out...
There's no middle of the road in something like this. He's got to understand that.
I think he does, but... Well, he'd rather lose everything than lose me. I'm all he's got.
And he's pretty important to you, isn't he?
More than anything in the world.
Without his cooperation, I doubt if I'll be able to do much. And if he gives in to this, a man like your father, it'll keep growing until it kills him.
Well, what do you want me to say?
Tell the driver to take us to your father. Say it's all right for me to talk to him.
All right, Mr. Dollar.
She looked as though she might cry, but she didn't. She gave the driver her address, then sat back in the seat and kept looking straight ahead while the cab headed across the bridge for New Jersey. Expense account item 3, $11.75 cab fare, which I insisted upon paying after we arrived at the Matson home. The butler met us at the door, and Chris led me into the study where her father rose to greet us.
Hello, Dad.
Hello, my dear. Mr. Dollar?
Good evening, Mr. Matson.
Dad, I told Mr. Dollar. I had to.
Believe me, Mr. Matson, it's the best thing.
Chris?
Yes.
My dear girl, this can be very serious.
Dad, it's already serious.
I know, but tell me, do you intend to bring in the police, Mr. Dollar?
I promised your daughter I wouldn't, unless it was absolutely necessary.
I see. You know everything?
Yes, Dad. I told him everything.
But you've said nothing to the police as yet?
No, I haven't.
Oh. Mr. Dollar, if these men find out that you know...
Who are these men, Mr. Matson?
Mr. Dollar, I would like to tell you something. In the past, I've always confided in my daughter. This time I hesitated because of the possible consequences. But nevertheless, I told her. I did so with the provision that she keep the affair a complete secret.
Oh, Dad.
I'm not angry, my dear. Believe me. I'm sure you did what you thought was best. Unfortunately, you just didn't realize the gravity of the situation.
Certainly I realized it.
Dear, you couldn't have. You couldn't have. These men aren't fooling. They've already destroyed $1 million business. It was just lucky there wasn't anyone in the building.
So you're going to give them what they want?
Yes, Mr. Dollar, I am.
You can't win.
I'm not expecting to win. I'm just thinking of my business, my family. What would you do in the same situation, Mr. Dollar? I think you'd do exactly what I'm doing.
I don't think so.
That's easy to say.
Look, Mr. Matson, I know you're in a tough spot. You said these men aren't fooling, and you're right. They'll do anything to scare you into paying their blackmail. They'll burn down a building, threaten you and your family, even kill if it comes to that.
But you wouldn't do what I'm doing?
Maybe. If I had some assurance it would stop there. But don't you know what happens once you give in to them?
Don't you think I've thought about that? Don't you think I've considered every possibility? They'll bleed me until there's nothing left. I realize that. But there's no alternative. It's that or...
You're afraid they'll kill me.
Chris, you're my whole life.
Well, then, Dad, consider me a little.
Consider? Good Lord, that's what I'm doing. That's all I'm doing.
Not now. What about a year from now? 2 years? 5 years? Well, Dad, if you give in to these men, what will it do to you? What will you have left 5 years from now?
The business doesn't matter.
I'm not talking about the business. We can both get along without the business if we have to. We did once, we can do it again. I'm talking about you. What will happen to you if you give in to this terrible blackmail? Well, there'll be nothing left of you. It'll kill you.
Mr. Matson, in some states there's a death penalty for kidnapping. But this kind of blackmail is worse than that. These men kidnap the one thing that people like you and me can't live without. Freedom.
My daughter's life is worth my freedom 7 days a week, Mr. Dollar.
If that happened, I'd just as soon be dead. Daddy, it would ruin you, and that most certainly would ruin me. There'd be nothing left of us, nothing of what we had. We'd just be alive.
Makes a lot of sense, Mr. Matson. I hope you'll see it and help me get these men. But whether you do or don't, I've got a job. I'll try to steer clear of the police as long as I can because I made a promise to your daughter. But I'm going to try and get those guys. They have to be gotten.
Dad, please.
I don't know, Chris. All right.
Oh, Dad.
Who are the men, Mr. Matson? Shot tore through the window and caught Matson in the chest. It was a swell punctuation point for my pep talk on freedom. Before Matson hit the rug, I was on my way to the study door with my gun in my hand. Outside, I circled to the spot near the window where the gunman had been standing. I stopped and listened. From inside the house, I could hear Christine Matson phoning for a doctor. And from not too far away, toward the front of the house, I heard a car start. I ran out to the drive and spotted the car pulling away about 50 yards from the house.
Mr. Dollar! Johnny!
Get back in the house, Chris.
But Dad's bleeding. I can't stop the bleeding.
How bad is it?
I can't tell. I called Dr. Phillips.
Well, get back in that house and wait. I got the car, but there's a man in that car with a shotgun. He may still be able to use it. Now, go on. I started down the driveway for the wrecked car. It was on its side, wrapped around a big oak. The only thing moving was the right front wheel, still spinning slowly. I reached the car and looked in. The shotgun, twisted by the impact, lay on the floor. And the man who'd fired it was halfway through the windshield, his life running out all over the hood. The driver's seat was empty.
Don't move an inch. I'll turn around. Hand your gun back over your shoulder. Okay. I'll walk back to the house.
Police will be coming any minute.
I just want a car. We'll borrow one of Mr. Matson's.
How far do you think you'll get?
It's not how far I'm going to get. How far we're going to get. You're an insurance man. You're going to be my insurance. You're going to get us just as far as you can. It all depends what your life's worth to the law.
I couldn't see his face. He kept behind me with his gun pointed at my back. We went around to the other side of the house to the garage and stopped. He shoved the gun hard into my spine.
Open the door.
As I started to open the big garage door, a car swung in the driveway, and we were suddenly framed in the glare of its headlights. I knew it was the doctor. The man with the gun in my back didn't. He turned, expecting the police.
Doctor?
Yes.
Your patient's in the house. Lester Matson lived and later identified both men as those that had tried to shake him down. They both had long records. Both had done time. The man with the shotgun was named Ernie Starbuck. The other, Stan Cole. Starbuck they buried in Potter's Field, while Cole looked unhappy. Not because he'd lost a partner, more because he'd gained a new one. A cellmate in Sing Sing he'd have to put up with for the rest of his natural life. After the doctors said her father was out of danger, I went back over to Jersey to say goodbye to Christine Matson.
Do you have to go right away?
Oh, case closed. Expense account likewise.
You live in Hartford?
Yeah.
Sometimes I drive up that way.
Oh? That would be nice.
When does your train leave?
4:30. I don't catch that one. There's not another one until 12:15.
Oh. Will you be saying goodbye to Dad?
I thought I'd stop by the hospital on my way to the station. Are you going in to see him?
Mm-hmm.
Drive in with me. We can see him together. Maybe have a quick drink afterwards.
I don't like quick drinks.
No.
Johnny,
Yeah?
would it make so much difference if you took the later train?
Oh, it sure would. But, I'll take it. Expense account items 4 and 5, $103.75, car rental and hotel bill. Item 6, $19.80, train fare and incidentals back to Hartford. Expense account total, $154.50. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, stars John Lund in the title role and was written by Blake Edwards with music by Eddie Dunstetter. Featured in tonight's cast were John Larch, Lillian Baeff, Hal March, and William Johnstone. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, is produced and directed by Jaime Del Valle.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, starring John Lund, has come to you through the worldwide facilities of the United States Armed Forces Radio and Television Service.
Wrigley's Spearmint Chewing Gum, the refreshing, delicious treat that gives you chewing enjoyment, presents for your listening enjoyment John Lund as
Johnny Dollar.
Ray Kemper, Johnny.
Oh, hello, Mr. Kemper.
Are you available?
Oh, very much so.
We insured a Mrs. William Post, New York City. She was killed last night.
Yeah, how?
murdered. A private detective named Paul Sachs and a lawyer named George Simon found her in her apartment. She'd been stabbed to death.
Any suspects?
Yeah, her husband, William Post. Lieutenant Roseman of the 5th Precinct is handling the case. Contact him. He expects you.
Okay, I can leave in an hour.
The makers of Wrigley's Spearmint Chewing Gum bring you John Lund and another adventure of the man with the action-packed expense account, America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
For refreshing taste, plus chewing enjoyment, treat yourself to delicious Wrigley's Spearmint Chewing Gum. When your mouth and throat feel hot and dry, a stick of Wrigley's Spearmint gives you quick, long-lasting refreshment. The lively, full-bodied spearmint flavor cools your mouth and freshens your taste. The chewing itself helps keep your throat pleasantly moist. Best of all, you can chew and enjoy refreshing Wrigley's Spearmint Gum almost any time and any place. Keep a package handy right in your purse or pocket so you can chew a stick whenever you want it. For refreshing taste plus chewing enjoyment, treat yourself to delicious Wrigley's Spearmint Gum. Millions enjoy it, and you will, too.
Expense account submitted by Special Investigator Johnny Dollar to Home Office, Columbia All Risk Insurance Company, Hartford, Connecticut. The following is an accounting of expenditures during my investigation of the William Post matter. Expense account item 1, $18.90, train fare and incidentals between Hartford and New York City. I arrived in the afternoon, registered at the hotel, and rented a car, which I drove to the 5th Precinct Police Station, where I met Lieutenant Roseman, an old friend.
I haven't seen you in a long time, Johnny. How's it going?
Oh, can't complain. You're a lieutenant now.
Yeah, getting up in the world.
Well, how about filling me in on this Post killing?
Sure. The woman's name is Teresa Post. Married to William Post, banker. She was found last night in her apartment, stabbed 4 times. Gag shoved in her mouth, apartment robbed.
A private detective named Sachs found her, huh?
Uh-huh. And Mrs. Post's lawyer.
George Simon.
Right. They both arrived at the apartment about the same time. Both had appointments with the victim. They got worried when she didn't show up. Found the janitor, and he opened the apartment for them. They discovered her lying on the floor in the bedroom.
What was missing?
According to her husband, all her jewels, about $15,000 worth. Also a cloth coat.
My boss said you were considering the husband.
Yeah. 3 days ago, they had an argument and separated. The wife was filing for divorce. She'd suspected Post playing around for some time, so she hired Sachs, a private detective. Sachs got the evidence, and she confronted her husband with it. He moved out and into a hotel. Sachs and the lawyer were supposed to meet her at 8 o'clock so that Sachs could turn over the evidence on her husband to the lawyer.
Well, what makes you think it's the husband?
Well, the robbery looks phony. The jewels okay, but the coat, the cloth coat, the only item of clothing that was stolen.
Yeah?
There was a full-length mink and a stole left in the closet.
Oh, mm-hmm. The husband got an alibi?
Sure. The woman he was seeing. The one who busted up the marriage.
Oh, who is she?
Well, the name of Hughes. Jane Hughes. Lives at 109 West 61st Street.
And she claims Post was with her at the time of the murder?
The victim had been dead about 3 hours, killed around 5 in the afternoon. The Hughes woman swears Post was with her all afternoon from about 1 till late that evening.
How'd the killer get into the apartment?
That's another thing that makes me suspect the husband. No evidence that shows the killer broke in. No way he could get in a window. The apartment's on the 8th floor, and a fire escape's at the end of the hall.
Well, I'd like to talk to the people involved.
Oh, sure, Johnny. What do you want to start with?
The men who found the body.
Sachs and Simon.
I'll take Sachs first. Roseman gave me the address of the private detective, and I drove over to 52nd Street, where I located my man. Paul Sachs was small, with a sour look and a wet handshake.
What can I do for you, boy?
I'm investigating the Post murder.
Uh-huh. So, well. Insurance man, huh?
That's right.
She insured for much?
I forgot to ask.
Yeah, probably is. Old man's loaded, boy.
When did Mrs. Post retain you?
Oh, about
to-
a month ago. Well, the 5th, to be exact. Wasn't too hard. The old man was pretty open about it. He was careful, all right, you know. Stayed to the more discreet places, but he was... Well, you know how those fellas are. Last one to think someone's checking up, so they aren't as careful as they should be. Want a drink?
No, thanks.
I was lucky.
Lucky?
Yeah, paid me up in full before the old man cut her up. Sure you don't want a little belt?
No, it's a little early.
Don't blame the old boy much, though.
How's that?
I mean, that little bit of fluff he was chasing around with. Mighty nice. Oh, yes, sir. Mighty nice. Yeah, I got a couple of pictures here. Cops have got duplicates. I keep these for the family album.
Uh-huh. You think Post killed his wife?
Oh, yeah, sure. He certainly had the motive. Threw him out and was going to take him for everything. I've been in on things like this, boy. You know, a man like me gets mixed up in all kinds of things. Murders like this, cut and dried. I tell you what, he made his mistake by taking that coat and leaving the mink. Stupid mistake. Real stupid, boy.
The police say she was killed around 5 in the afternoon.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, she was cut up something awful.
Where were you at 5, Mr. Sachs?
Me?
Oh, nothing personal.
You're barking up the wrong private detective, boy. I didn't have no motive. I was right here in my office. Didn't finish work till around 6. I got other cases, you know.
Can you prove you were in your office?
Can I prove? Well, boy, if I gotta prove it, I'll prove it. But there ain't no motive, boy. Why would I want to kill her, huh? You ain't thinking, boy. When you've been investigating as long as I have, you won't run around asking ridiculous questions like that.
Yeah, I should be ashamed of myself. Well, Mr. Sachs, it's been a real pleasure.
You gotta go, boy?
Yeah, I'm afraid so, but it's been charming.
Good. You need any help? Just give me a call.
Oh, I'll do that, boy. My next stop was the office of Mr. George Simon, attorney at law. The surroundings were a little different from Sachs's private pig pen. A big suite of offices with a big suite of secretaries. George Simon greeted me with a professional smile and offered me an overstuffed chair.
Yes, I arrived at Mrs. Post's around 5 minutes to 8. My appointment was at 8 sharp.
When did Sachs arrive?
He was already there, waiting in the hall. He said he'd just come up in the elevator, but that Mrs. Post had not answered his ring.
Lovely fellow.
You met him?
Yes, a few minutes ago.
Well, we waited in the hall, thinking that Mrs. Post was late and due to arrive at any minute. 10 or 15 minutes later, I got worried. I knew how important the meeting was, and I couldn't understand why she'd forget it. I had talked to her that afternoon.
What time?
That I talked to her? Oh, I'd say around 3.
She seemed all right?
Well, she wasn't particularly happy about the situation. They'd been married for 7 years.
But other than that, nothing else seemed to be bothering her?
If it was, she didn't mention it.
All right, you waited for about 5 or 10 minutes.
Yes. Then I located the janitor and had him unlock the door. We found Mrs. Post in the bedroom. I called the police immediately.
Did Mr. Post know that you were meeting with his wife?
I have no way of knowing that.
Do you think he killed her?
No, I don't think he's the type to kill anyone.
Mrs. Post was certainly going to get a sizable settlement.
She was going to ask for one.
And Mr. Post knew that she was.
I believe she told him. She mentioned to me that she had.
How large a settlement?
We hadn't arrived at any figure. I was supposed to meet her and this private detective. I was supposed to look over the evidence, and then we were to discuss future plans.
Where were you at 5 o'clock, Mr. Simon?
Here in my office. I was here all day except for lunch.
All right, sir. Thank you very much for your trouble.
Glad to help. But I don't think Mr. Post killed his wife.
Well, I can't disagree with you.
You don't think he did?
I can't agree with you either. You see, I just don't know yet. See you later, Mr. Simon. The next person on my list was Miss Jane Hughes, the reason for the marital rift between William Post and his wife. She lived on the 7th floor of an attractive apartment house on West 61st Street. And when she opened the door for me, I could understand how any man might stray a little if Jane Hughes smiled at him once too many times.
Hello.
Can I come in?
You might if I knew who you were, what you wanted.
The name is Johnny Dollar.
What do you want, Johnny?
Just a little talk.
Any special subject?
William Post.
Goodbye, Johnny.
And Mrs. William Post.
Didn't you hear me, Johnny?
I'm an insurance investigator.
Oh,
Lieutenant Roseman thought I should talk to you.
I thought you were a reporter.
Now can I come in?
Just put one foot in front of the other.
Well, thanks. I'll try it.
I didn't mean to be rude, but you understand about reporters.
Oh, you weren't rude.
Have a seat.
Thanks.
Why are you investigating me, John?
Oh, routine. That's all, routine.
I'm just going to tell you the same thing I told the police.
All right.
Bill, Mr. Post, was with me most of the afternoon.
How long have you known Mr. Post?
About 6 months. We're just good friends.
Yeah, I know.
It's not like that at all, Mr. Dollar. We're just good friends.
Okay.
Oh, that's a shame. I'm afraid you'll have to leave.
Mr. Post?
Would you mind going out the back way?
Well, I've got to talk to him sooner or later.
Make it later, huh?
Well, generally, I'm a gentleman, but...
But this time, you'll make an exception.
Might prove interesting.
All right. Why don't you answer it?
Sure. Mr. Post?
Who are you?
Johnny Dollar?
What are you doing here?
Bill,
Yes?
Mr. Dollar's an insurance man.
Insurance?
I'm with Columbia All Risk.
Oh, don't close the door.
He wants to talk to you.
At my office, Mr. Dollar. Goodbye.
That's the way you want it, Mr. Post?
Exactly. Now get out of here. You've got no business here.
Mr. Post.
Get out.
Friends, no matter what kind of work you do, it's a real help to chew delicious Wrigley Spearmint Gum right while you're working. When you're warm or tired, for instance, the lively, full-bodied spearmint flavor is really refreshing. It helps keep your mouth and throat feeling cool and moist. Chewing on that smooth, good-tasting piece of Wrigley's spearmint makes the time pass more pleasantly, too. It seems to make your work go smoother and easier. Keep a package or two of Wrigley's Spearmint Chewing Gum handy all the time. Enjoy chewing Wrigley's Spearmint while you're working and at other times. That's Wrigley's Spearmint Chewing Gum. Healthful, refreshing, delicious. And now, with our star, John Lund, we bring you the second act of Yours Truly, Johnny Dollar.
On the police list, William Post was the #1 candidate for the killing of his wife. On my list, he was just a wealthy banker with a dead wife, a seductive girlfriend, and a nasty personality. I'd run into many a nasty personality in my travels, so I let the incident roll off my back and drove over to the Park Avenue apartment where Mrs. Post had been murdered. In the basement, I located the janitor, a bent little man who was working on the plumbing and singing a flat chorus of Dixie.
Look away. Look away. Look away, Dixieland. Oh, way down yonder.
Hey, Pop.
The old time
Pop.
is not far.
Pop.
Look away. Yeah.
Are you the janitor?
Uh-huh.
What's your name?
It's Pete.
You want to do me a favor, Pete?
Pete Kellett. Who are you?
My name is Johnny.
When Johnny comes marching home again, hooray! Hooray! When Johnny comes marching
Pete,
home again, hooray!
Pete.
Hooray!
Hey, Pete. Pete, I want you to do something for me.
I don't know you.
I'm an insurance investigator.
Yes?
You got a pass key to number 8? Well, have you?
Number 8?
Where the woman was murdered.
Oh, I'm busy. When Johnny comes marching home again.
Pete, oh, Pete. Hey, Pete. Pete, I want you to let me into number 8.
What for?
Because I'm investigating Mrs. Post's murder.
Can't.
It's all right. I'm working with the police.
Who'd you say you was?
My name is Dollar.
You said it was Johnny.
That goes in front. It's Johnny Dollar.
Oh, Johnny, that's a funny name. When Johnny comes marching home again, Henrik. There ain't nothing for you to see in number 8.
I just want to look over the place.
Why?
I just want to take a look around.
I don't want to go up there.
Well, then give me the key.
I can't.
I got $10 that says you can.
Make it 20, and I'll let you look over number 3. Folks are out of town for a couple of months.
I just want to get into number 8.
Okay.
Oh, thanks. You opened the door last night for Mr. Sachs and Mr. Simon, didn't you?
Who?
How long have you worked here?
Oh, I don't know. I guess I worked here. Oh, let me see now. Oh, my. I just worked here. Oh, for just a long time, I guess. That's all.
You knew Mrs. Post?
Yes, anyway.
Have you ever seen Mr. Sachs or Mr. Simon before last night?
Who?
The men you let into Mrs. Post's apartment.
I saw him last night. I never saw him before. Not even once I never saw. Oh, I didn't like that one of them. Oh, that one with that squinted face. He squinted it all up, and he had those dirty teeth.
Sachs.
Who?
The one that squinted his face all up.
Oh, I didn't like him.
Well, thanks, Pete.
I didn't like Mrs. Post either.
Why not?
I just didn't like her. Sweet, sweet chariot, coming to carry me home.
I let myself into number 8 and took a good look over the whole place. There was still blood on the bedroom floor, but everything else had been cleaned up, and there was nothing that gave me any ideas. The mink coat and stole were still in the closet. I went back downstairs to give Pete his keys, but the funny little man wasn't around. I left the keys on a bench near the furnace, went back out to my car, and drove to the hotel. I showered, shaved, wrote the first half of this report, and then started to go downstairs to have dinner. Johnny Dollar.
Roseman, Johnny. Got something interesting on the post case.
Oh, good.
Somebody pawned that cloth coat late this afternoon.
You know who it was?
No, I'm just on my way down to the pawn shop to get a description from the pawnbroker. You want to meet me?
Where is it?
945 East 185th Street.
I'll see you there. I climbed back into my car and drove uptown to the pawn shop. Lieutenant Roseman was already there, talking to the pawnbroker. And the answers he was getting were very interesting.
You remember the man who pawned the coat?
Oh, yes, he was a kind of small, funny-looking fella. He didn't said much, just handed me the coat and took what I gave him. You know, I remember the circular, what you sent. Seems strange, a man like that having such a nice coat. I thought right away that was stolen.
The man was small?
Yeah, kind of stooped over.
Anything else?
No. Oh, yeah. He had a habit of singing to himself all the time, under his breath.
The first good lead. Roseman and I drove back to Mrs. Post's apartment and went down in the basement, where we found Pete Kellett asleep on an old cot. Hey, Pete. Pete. Come on, wake up.
What do you want?
You remember me?
Should I?
I was down here this afternoon.
Oh, I guess I do.
You remember Lieutenant Roseman?
Was he with you?
Come on, Pete. We're going down to the station.
Now?
Yeah.
You pawned a coat late this afternoon.
Huh?
A cloth coat. The one that was stolen from number 8. You pawned it.
I don't know nothing about no coat.
Let's go, Pete.
Right now?
Right now.
Okay, but I ain't had much sleep. That plumbing, it keeps a man awake all night. Just let me get my shoes. I got shoes, and you got shoes. Oh, God's children got shoes.
We took Pete Keller down to the precinct and questioned him for half an hour. But he refused to admit that he'd ever pawned the coat or that he knew anything about it. The pawnbroker was sent for, and we all went down to the lineup for an identification. Pete Kellett was in the first line. Third man.
Number 3, murder. Number 3, step out. Number 3, you. Huh?
You're number 3, aren't you?
Well, if you'd like me to be.
Then step out.
Oh, sure. Is this okay?
Just answer the questions.
You mind if I sit down?
Just stand right there and face the front, hands at your sides.
Oh, I'm awful tired. Plumbing keeps me awake all night.
What's your name?
Huh?
I said, what's your name?
Lieutenant.
Oh, it's Pete.
That's
Where you
the man.
from?
Pete
He is
Kellett?
the
Where you
one that
from?
pawned the coat.
Oh, what do you mean?
You sure?
I mean,
Oh,
where's your place of
positively.
residence?
Oh.
Sergeant Hanley,
Yes, Lieutenant.
number 3, hold for interrogation.
Okay, you step back in line.
Me?
Yeah, you.
Oh, I thought you wanted to hear where I was
Step
from.
back.
My goodness.
We had a positive identification. The pawnbroker had pointed out Pete Kellett as the man who'd pawned the coat. We took the little janitor down to the interrogation room and worked on him for 5 long hours. But he didn't crack.
Pete, why don't you save us all a lot of trouble and admit it?
What?
That you killed Mrs. Post.
Oh, why should I admit that? You want me to tell the truth, don't you?
Oh.
Pete,
Yes.
you did pawn the coat, didn't you?
Yes.
Okay. Where did you get it?
From Mrs. Post.
And you stabbed her.
No.
Then how did you get it?
Well, she'd give it to me.
You expect us to believe
Why,
that?
sure.
Why didn't you tell us this in the first place?
Well, I thought if you knew, you'd think just what you're thinking.
She gave you the coat.
Yes.
When?
Well, a couple of days ago.
You told me you didn't like her.
I didn't.
She gave you a nice coat like that, but you didn't like her?
No.
Then why did you take it?
Why not?
Now, look, you...
Lieutenant.
Yeah?
Come here a minute, will you?
Can I go?
You move a muscle and I'll bust you. Oh. I tell you, Johnny.
Yeah, I know. But after all,
He's nuts.
There's a more polite term for it.
He's nuts and he's guilty.
You want to find out if he is?
I know.
I mean guilty. Find out and eliminate all this questioning?
How?
He's scared of that room. He wouldn't take me up to number 8, although he gave me the key. I think we can scare him into a confession.
I'll try anything.
Of course, there's a chance he's telling the truth.
If he is, I'll eat your shoulder holster.
Well, turn him loose. Send him back to his job.
What's that going to do?
You just hang around and watch. Roseman agreed to continue questioning Kellett for another half hour while I got things ready, then release him and take him back to the Park Avenue apartment. I left the precinct and drove to Jane Hughes' residence on West 61st Street.
Oh, you'd better leave.
Look, this is very important.
Who is it?
It's me, and I'm coming in.
Now, Dollar, you listen to me.
No, you listen. I don't like you, Mr. Post, but I've got a chance to clear up this mess and get back to Hartford, so I'll be far enough away to keep from belting you in the teeth. Now, we think we know who killed your wife.
Well, who is it?
The janitor of the building.
Old Kellett?
That's right, but we've got to prove it. I'll need your permission and Miss Hughes' help.
I can't let Miss Hughes get involved in anything that might in any way...
Okay. I'll see you later.
Wait a minute, Johnny. What do you want me to do?
Jane.
It's all right. It's important to me. This hasn't been the most pleasant situation, Johnny, but regardless of what anyone thinks, I'm going to marry Bill. We're in love.
I'll send you a box of rice if this works.
What do you want me to do?
I want you to be Mrs. Post. The dead Mrs. Post.
What?
Let him finish.
I want you to go up in that apartment, dress like Mrs. Post, and call Kellett, the janitor. Tell him there's something wrong with the plumbing. Play it straight, as though nothing had ever happened.
Are you out of your mind? You think...
The police will be there.
No.
Let's go, Johnny.
I drove Jane Hughes to the apartment where Roseman was waiting. She got dressed in one of Mrs. Post's nightgowns and a robe, then buzzed the basement.
Well, what about my voice?
Just keep it low.
Hello. Hello?
Pete,
Who is this?
Mrs. Post.
What?
There's something the matter with the plumbing. Will you come up and fix it? Pete, did you hear me?
Yes.
Will you come right up?
Yes.
Here he comes.
Come in, Pete. What's the matter?
You're dead.
No, I'm not. Come in.
Didn't I kill you?
No, I'm all right.
No, something's wrong. No, you're dead.
Stop being silly. Come in here.
Well, if he ain't dead, if I didn't kill you the first time, I better do it now.
Don't move, Pete.
Snap
on the lights, Miss Hughes. Put down that knife, Pete.
Is it all right?
Yeah.
Why, you ain't Mrs. Post.
No.
Well, then she is dead. I did kill her.
That's right, Pete.
Oh, I feel better.
Pete had the jewels hidden in a bucket of paint in the basement. He finally explained that he was in the process of robbing Mrs. Post when she came home, surprised him, and he had to kill her. He didn't take the minx because he thought the cloth coat was prettier. I drove Jane Hughes back to her apartment, where a grateful William Post was waiting with open arms. And that was that. Expense account item 2, $15.85 for a late dinner for Lieutenant Roseman and me, after which I retired to my hotel bed and slept for about 10 hours. Expense account items 3 and 4, $35.75, hotel bill and car rental. Item 5, $16.55, train fare and incidentals back to Hartford. Expense account total, $87.05. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Remember, friends, for refreshing taste plus chewing enjoyment, treat yourself to delicious Wrigley's Spearmint Chewing Gum. The taste of fresh spearmint is cooling and delightful, and there's lots of it in every stick of Wrigley's Spearmint Gum. It freshens your mouth, helps keep your throat moist, and sweetens your breath besides. You'll enjoy the good chewing, too, because Wrigley's Spearmint is so smooth and pleasant to chew on. There's nothing else quite like it. Next time you're at the store, stop at your friendly merchant's display of chewing gum and get a few packages of good-tasting Wrigley's Spearmint Gum. Always keep some handy for refreshing taste plus chewing enjoyment. That's Wrigley's Spearmint Chewing Gum. Healthful, refreshing, delicious. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, brought to you by Wrigley's Spearmint Chewing Gum, stars John Lund in the title role and was written by Blake Edwards with music by Eddie Dunstetter. Featured in tonight's cast were Jack Moyles, William Johnstone, Benny Rubin, Charles Davis, Mary Jane Croft, Hy Everback, and Howard McNear. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, is produced and directed by Jaime Del Valle. The makers of Wrigley's Spearmint Chewing Gum hope you enjoyed tonight's story of Johnny Dollar and that you're enjoying delicious Wrigley's Spearmint Gum every day. This is Charles Lyon, inviting you to join us again next week at the same time when from Hollywood, John Lund returns as...
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
This is the CBS Radio Network. Wrigley's Spearmint Chewing Gum, the refreshing, delicious treat that gives you chewing enjoyment, presents for your listening enjoyment John Lund as...
Johnny Dollar.
Hanley Conrad, Johnny.
Oh, how are you, Mr. Conrad?
Fine. Are you employed?
Not at the moment.
How about catching the next plane for Los Angeles?
All right. What is it?
We insure a Mr. William McEdwards. His home burned down last night and he was killed in the fire.
Who do I see?
C.H. Anderson, Beverly Hills Chief of Police.
All right, I'll call the airport and make a reservation.
The makers of Wrigley's Spearmint Chewing Gum bring you John Lund in another adventure of the man with the action-packed expense account, America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Friends, the makers of Wrigley's Spearmint Chewing Gum present these weekly adventures of Johnny Dollar because they know that millions of you enjoy Johnny Dollar. That's true of Wrigley's Spearmint Chewing Gum, too. It's enjoyed by millions, day in and day out. People find that chewing on a smooth, delicious piece of Wrigley's Spearmint Gum somehow makes time pass more pleasantly. Whether you're working, driving, shopping, or just taking things easy, that good, tasty chewing gives you enjoyment and satisfaction. So always keep a package of Wrigley's Spearmint Chewing Gum handy. And whenever you want a refreshing, delicious treat, chew a stick. You'll like it. You really will.
Expense account submitted by Special Investigator Johnny Dollar to Home Office, World Insurance and Indemnity Company, Hartford, Connecticut. The following is an accounting of expenditures during my investigation of the Amita matter. Expense account item 1, $193.55, plane fare and incidentals between Hartford and Los Angeles. I arrived at the Los Angeles airport the next morning, rented a car, and drove it to the hotel, where I registered and put in a call to Chief Anderson at the Beverly Hills Police Department. An hour later, we were sitting in his City Hall office.
Lieutenant Hankins got the call at 7 minutes after 6 in the evening, placed by a neighbor. House was almost completely gutted by the time the fire department got it under control. Hankins found McEdwards' body in the bedroom.
He'd been alone in the house?
Yeah. His wife returned about an hour later, found her husband dead.
Swell homecoming. How'd the fire start?
We're not sure. Started in the bedroom. One thing's pretty certain. It wasn't an accident.
What do you mean?
The first cursory examination by the coroner's deputy indicated the victim had burned to death. This morning, we got another report. Further examination at the morgue showed McEdwards had been stabbed.
What?
Mm-hmm. Also hit over the head, severe skull fracture.
So you think McEdwards was killed first and the fire started to cover the crime?
Yeah. That's how I came into it. Ordinarily, Lieutenant Hankins would handle the whole thing. This murder angle is confidential, Dollar, until the coroner files an official report.
Sure. Any suspects?
No, not yet.
Well, thank you, Chief Anderson. I think I'll go out and talk to the widow. If that's all right with you.
Sure. But don't mention the murder angle.
I won't. Where's she staying?
With her mother in Encino.
Yes?
My name is Dollar, Johnny Dollar. I'd like to speak to your daughter, if I may.
What's it about?
The death of her husband. I'm a special investigator for the insurance company.
Well, Mr. Dollar, my daughter's not feeling very well.
I know it's difficult, Mrs. Rizzanelli, but if it's at all possible, I'd like to see her. Get it over with. Get it out of the way.
Well, who is it, Mom?
Oh, she's up. She was resting.
Well, who is it?
This is Mr. Dollar, honey. He's,
Is it about Bill?
Yes, it is.
He's a special investigator, an insurance investigator.
Well, come in.
Thanks.
I was lying down, Mr. Dollar.
Well, I'll be in the kitchen. It's nice meeting you, Mr. Dollar.
Nice meeting you, Mrs. Rizzanelli.
Well, won't you sit down?
Thank you.
You're with the insurance company?
Yes, World Insurance and Indemnity.
How can I help?
Just answer some questions. I'm sure you've had your fill of answering questions by now.
It's all right.
You returned about an hour after the fire. Is that correct?
That's right.
Where had you been?
I'd driven to Pasadena. Bill, he had to work, so he couldn't go with me. A few days ago, Mr. McEdwards, that's Bill's father, returned from a location trip to Korea and gave us an antique, an old Chinese Buddha. We wanted to find out about it, so I took it to a friend of ours in Pasadena who collects Oriental art.
A Buddha?
Yes. Bill's dad found it in Korea and gave it to us as a sort of belated wedding gift. We'd only been married for 6 months.
When did you leave for Pasadena?
Oh, around 4 in the afternoon. I would have left sooner, but I had to clean house and fix Bill's lunch. I'm sorry, Mr. Dollar, but it's still a little hard to talk about it.
Just a few more questions.
I'm all right.
Did anything unusual happen?
Unusual?
Well, anything your husband might have said before you left. Anything out of the ordinary that happened?
I don't understand. Why do you think something unusual might have happened? Is there something I don't know about this, Mr. Dollar?
No, it's nothing like that. I'm just checking everything.
There was a fire. My husband lost his life. Are you considering that it might not have been an accident?
I'm not considering anything. I'm just checking. This Buddha, where is it now?
Charlie Wilkins, our friend in Pasadena, has it. He wasn't sure, but he thought that it might be very rare, and he asked me to leave it for a few days.
Charles Wilkins.
Yes.
And your husband's father brought the Buddha back from Korea.
Yes.
Is Mr. McEdwards Sr. in the service?
No, he's a production man for International Pictures. He was making a documentary film in Korea.
I'd like to talk to him.
I think he's at the studio now. He lives on Beverly Glen.
Well, I'll try to reach him at the studio. Thank you very much for your time and patience.
Certainly. Goodbye, Mr. Dollar.
I left the attractive Valley home and drove back to the hotel, where I put in a call to International Studios for John McEdwards, the victim's father. His secretary told me he was at home, but that she'd deliver my message and have him call me. In about 5 minutes, McEdwards called, and I made an appointment to see him. I drove out Sunset toward Westwood Village and turned north on Beverly Glen. John McEdwards lived in a small house in the middle of a lot of acreage. The reason for the acreage met me at the high closed gate. 4 giant Great Danes faced me behind the steel fence. Their owner, a tall, wiry, middle-aged man, bounded down the steps of the house and ordered his animals to be silent.
Yes, easy. Come on, Simpson. You, Mr. Dollar?
Yeah.
I'll be with you in a minute. Come on. Get over there. Come on, boy. Come on. That's it. My name, Mr. Dollar.
Wouldn't it be just as well if we talked out here?
They won't hurt you. Come on in. Now, easy, Jimmy, easy.
Well...
Easy.
Nice doggy.
They're all right. Just as friendly as they can be.
Well, by gosh, they are.
I'm McEdwards.
Glad to know you, Mr. McEdwards. Oh, easy, boy.
Sammy,
I'm just shaking his hand.
Come on into the house.
Fine. Sure hate to run into that pack if you weren't around.
They wouldn't do anything unless maybe you tried to break in the house or something. There's an article in the paper not too long ago about some guy trying to break in a house. The owner's Great Dane spotted him going in the window and broke his neck.
Broke his neck?
Yeah. No, Samson. You stay out. That's all.
Samson?
Yeah. Samson, Delilah, Cleopatra. I call her Patty. And the Duchess. Sit down.
Thanks.
The Duchess is the mother. She threw 12 her first litter. I kept 3. Well, you didn't come here to talk about dogs. Can I get you a beer?
No, thanks.
You want to talk about Bill?
Yes.
Wonderful boy. Terrible thing. I'm just trying to keep busy and not think about it. It's pretty tough when you raise a boy and see him through all these years.
Yes, sir.
What do you want to talk about?
How long were you in Korea, Mr. McEdwards?
About 3 months.
I understand you brought back an old Buddha.
Yeah. Why?
I saw your daughter-in-law, she told me.
How's she taking it?
Pretty well, I'd say.
Yeah, what a wonderful girl. Never thought Bill would get married, but he sure picked the right one when he did. Yeah. Tough, isn't it? Only been married 6 months. Tough on Pat.
Tell me something about this Buddha.
Well, it was funny how I found it. I was helping build a dam. We had to block up a small stream and get the water to rise for a shot we needed. I was digging up some rocks a few yards away from the road, and I uncovered the old Buddha. It was in a box. Nice, neat hole.
Your daughter-in-law said she took it to Charles Wilkins. that he thought it was very rare.
Yeah. Why are you so interested in the Buddha, Mr. Dollar?
Oh, just a casual interest. My company sent me out to investigate the fire, and when your daughter-in-law mentioned the Buddha, I got interested.
Your company insured my son's life.
That's right.
You didn't know Bill, did you?
No.
Nice boy. Easygoing. Never thought about insurance or things like that until he met Pat. Then he settled down. Best thing that ever happened to him. You sure you won't have a beer, Mr. Dollar?
Oh, no, really. Thanks, it's the same.
Those darn dogs. There must be someone at the gate. Oh, it's Pat. Hi.
Hi. Oh, now get back. Come on.
Shove him back. Hello, honey.
Hi, Dad. Oh. Hello, Mr. Dollar.
Hello?
Mr. Dollar, I just had a visit from Police Chief Anderson. He came just after you left. That's why you asked me all those questions.
He told you.
Yes, he did.
What is it?
Dad, the fire wasn't an accident.
What? Well, Pat, what is it? What do you mean it wasn't an accident?
Would you tell him, Mr. Dollar?
If you'd like me to.
What is it, Mr. Dollar?
The fire wasn't an accident, Mr. McEdwards.
Somebody deliberately?
Bill was murdered.
Oh, honey. Mr. Dollar.
Yeah?
But why?
Mr. Dollar, do you think it had something to do with that Buddha?
I don't know, Mrs. McEdwards. I'm trying to find out. Friends, Wrigley's Spearmint Chewing Gum is a refreshing, delicious treat you can enjoy just about any time. Even when you're busy working, you can slip a stick of Wrigley's Spearmint in your mouth and enjoy that pleasant chewing. The lively, full-bodied spearmint flavor cools your mouth and freshens your taste. The good, smooth chewing helps relieve pent-up tension, gives you satisfaction. As a result, you seem to feel more relaxed and get more enjoyment out of what you're doing. So enjoy chewing Wrigley's Spearmint Gum while you work and at other times, too. Get a few packages next time you're at the store. That's Wrigley's Spearmint Chewing Gum. Healthful, refreshing, delicious. And now, with our star, John Lund, we bring you the second act of Yours Truly, Johnny Dollar. John McEdwards walked me down to the gate and through the Great Danes. Then I drove to Pasadena and met Mr. Charles Wilkins, authority on Oriental art.
I can't say absolutely. I'm still doing research, but I believe the Buddha to be the original Amita image Buddha.
What does that mean?
Well, in Buddhism, there's more than one Buddha. Each may have an earthly life, but there is never more than one in the world at any time. And Buddhas come into being at irregular intervals and only when there is a special need for their presence. In the Mahayana system of Buddhism, there are 300 million Buddhas, but the Amita is one of the 5 Buddhas of contemplation.
And the Buddha Mr. McEdwards found is the original Amita?
I'm almost positive that it is. I believe its origin dates back to sometime around 200 B.C.
What would you say it's worth?
Well, that would depend. To a responsible collector, really no way of telling.
Well, let's say you were a wealthy, responsible collector, Mr. Wilkins.
Let's just say responsible.
How much would you pay for the original Amita Buddha?
Well, if I could buy it for, say, 150, maybe 200,000...
$200,000?
I would be getting a bargain. I would go as high as $500,000 if I had the money.
Well, Mr. Wilkins, thank you.
This thing is worth $500,000?
That's what the man said.
Well, now, that's what I call a motive.
Yeah.
If the Buddha is really an art treasure, then the U.S. Customs Office is going to be very interested.
That's their affair. I'm interested in who killed Bill McEdwards.
Well, I don't know where this will take us, but at least it's a lead, only the real one I've had so far. We questioned all of the victim's associates, and from what we could find out, he didn't have an enemy in the world. No love rivals, no discarded girlfriends, no money troubles, nothing.
But he had the Buddha.
Yeah. Question is, who knew he had it, besides his wife and father?
Well, how about the location troupe old man McEdwards was with in Korea?
Mm-hmm. I'll check with the studio right away.
Yeah. But it's not just somebody who knew he had it. It's somebody who knew the value of it.
Somebody who's hep to Oriental art, huh?
Maybe the guy who buried it.
Why would anybody stash a prize like that in a hole in the ground?
Well, for safekeeping, maybe. There's been a war in Korea.
Yeah, thanks for telling me. But say it was the person who buried the thing. Why would he have to steal it? He could just step up and claim his property.
If he was the rightful owner. But suppose he stole it in the first place.
Yeah. Well, I like guessing games as well as the next one, but it's time I got to work.
Where are you going to start?
First, the motion picture company, then we'll check all incoming passengers from the Orient last week. Ships, planes, military personnel.
That shouldn't take more than a month.
You got any better ideas?
At the moment, no.
Then I want another talk with McEdwards Sr.
I thought I'd run out and see him this afternoon.
Yeah, do that. If you turn up anything, let me know.
Sure. If I do.
Come in, Miss Dollar. I was just finishing some dinner.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, don't be silly. Come on in and have a cup of coffee with me. If you haven't had your dinner, I'll be glad to throw on a couple of chops.
No, thanks. I don't get hungry early.
Have a seat.
Thanks.
You want some coffee, don't you?
Yeah, that'll be fine.
I'm not much of a bachelor. Wife died 3 years ago, and I still haven't got used to doing things like cooking, keeping house. Usually eat out. You take cream or sugar?
Black is fine.
Pat was in a pretty bad way after you left, but she finally came around all right.
That's tough.
Yeah, it is.
I wanted to talk some more about...
Oh, darn. Excuse me. Hello? Oh, yes, hello, dear. Yes, she worked. She hasn't. Well, she left here about, I'd say about 5:30, maybe 5:45. Well, she might have stopped off someplace. No, don't worry about it. No, she was just fine when she left. Oh, sure. No, I'm all right, dear. Sure, I will. Bye. Funny. That was Pat's mother. She isn't home yet.
When did she leave here?
About 2 hours ago. Well, we're all on edge.
Oh, I don't think there's anything to worry about.
No. She's taking it pretty well. When she left, she was fine.
I talked with Mr. McEdwards for about another hour. He told me everything he could about the Buddha and his trip to Korea. He looked dead tired. His eyes were beginning to show the strain. I decided to say good night and forget the rest of the interrogation until the next morning when the phone rang again.
Hello? What? I'm sorry, I didn't... Yes, that's right. Yes. But wait. Hello.
Something wrong?
I'm not supposed to say anything.
What was it?
I think you're a nice guy, Johnny. Can I trust you?
Certainly.
They said not to tell anyone, but I've got to trust someone. I can't think for myself. Too much has happened. You won't take this to the police?
I can't promise that.
Well, I don't think you will after I tell you. I don't know who that was on the phone, but it was some guy, and he said they've got Pat.
What do you mean they've got Pat?
Kidnapped.
Now, look, exactly what was said.
Good gosh, you read about things like this, but you never think they're going to happen.
Now, take it easy.
Oh, I'm all right. I just haven't had much sleep. I can't think straight.
Now, the man that called,
He said he had Pat, that she was all right for me not to say anything to anyone, or she'd get hurt. He said for me to get the Buddha.
And that is it.
They said to get it, and they'd see that Pat was returned home safely.
What did they say to do with it?
Just to get it, they'd contact me.
What are you going to do?
Get the Buddha.
Wait a minute. Let me go.
They might be watching. They'd know I told you about the phone call.
They won't do anything to Pat until they get the Buddha. I'll call Wilkins. He's probably in the book.
Well, don't you think it'd be better if I went?
Yeah, maybe it would. But I'm going to follow you. If anything happens, I want to be around.
All right, let's go.
Wilkins turned over the Buddha while I waited outside his house, watching for anyone who might have followed. The drive back to McEdwards' home was uneventful. No single car stayed with us for any length of time from the freeway to Beverly Glen. While McEdwards opened the gates and drove his car into the garage, I parked in a secluded spot some 50 yards away from the house and walked back, where I met McEdwards at the foot of the front steps.
You think we were followed?
No, I don't think so.
Well, I've got the Buddha. What do I do with it?
Wait till you hear from them. They said they'd contact you.
Yeah? Think I should call Pat's mother and tell her what's happened?
No, not yet. No sense in worrying her until we find out what's going to happen.
But, Dad...
Pat!
Good evening, Mr. McEdwards.
John McEdwards had visitors, 2 men. One rather slight, fairly young. The other an enormous man, a good 6.5 feet that must have weighed well over 300 pounds. The slight one held a .38 pointed in our direction. Pat started across to McEdwards, but the big man stopped her.
Sit down.
What is this?
Allow me to introduce myself. Alan Sutka. And this is my friend, Don Roach. We've come for the Buddha.
I let him in with my key, Dad. I had to.
Sure. It's okay.
Who's your friend, Mr. McEdwards?
Yes, I warned you not to confide in anyone.
This is Mr. Dollar. He's just an old friend.
How unfortunate for Mr. Dollar.
You've gone to a lot of trouble to get this Buddha.
Indeed, I have. Nearly 5 years, to be exact. Now, what is your interest in this matter, Mr. Dollar?
Purely professional.
Are you a policeman?
Not quite.
I see.
Mr. McEdwards isn't responsible for my getting mixed up in this. I was here when you called and forced him into telling me.
As I said before, most unfortunate. Now, Mr. McEdwards, I'll take the Buddha.
Not yet, you won't.
Oh? Perhaps you don't understand.
Yeah, that's it exactly. Which one of you bums killed my son?
Killed your son?
He was killed, Sutka. The fire didn't work. The police know all about it.
Indeed.
Come on, Mr. Sucker. Let's get this over with and get out of here.
Patience, patience. You'll have to forgive my young friend.
How did you know Mr. McEdwards had the Buddha?
Its discovery made the Tokyo papers. I did some checking, found out when Mr. McEdwards was returning to the States, flew here to meet him.
Why'd you kill my son?
I don't mind telling you. Under the circumstances, I cannot afford to let any of you live. Your son discovered Roach here in the act of burglarizing his home. He protested too much. Roach had to kill him. It wasn't premeditated. We assumed the Buddha was in the house. We knew that Mr. McEdwards here had delivered it to his son the night before.
Why, you...
Take it easy, take it easy.
Mr. Dollar's right. Should you get out of hand, Roach will shoot you on the spot. Now, if you don't mind, I'll have that Buddha.
Oh, Dad.
Without hysterics, if you don't mind.
Just one more question. How did you know about the Buddha?
Mr. Dollar, I've known about that particular Amita Buddha for many, many years. Another man knew about it also. Unfortunately, he was the first to locate it. His name was Wu Sung, an Oriental collector. He discovered the Amita Buddha in a Tibetan temple shortly after World War II and stole it, then smuggled it out of Tibet and into Korea. I followed him, made him a handsome offer, but he refused to sell. He died under rather mysterious circumstances, but I didn't have the chance to leave Korea with the Buddha.
The war.
Very astute, yes. The communists suddenly attacked, and there was absolutely no way I could get the Buddha out of the country without someone discovering it.
So you buried it?
A few hundred yards from Wu Sung's home. I imagine the house has long since vanished from the face of the earth. I bided my time in Tokyo, waiting for hostilities to cease, but as fate will have it, Mr. McEdwards uncovered my prize.
Mr. Sutka, you talk too much.
I enjoy it, Roach. And after all, what good will the information be to our friends?
Come on, let's get the Buddha.
Yes. Now, Mr. McEdwards, you will either turn over the Buddha, or Roach will kill you immediately.
Give it to him.
Here.
Thank you. Now, if you'll all lead the way down into the yard, we'll proceed to my car and take a short trip.
Oh, Dad.
It's all right, honey.
Now, if you please. Beautiful animals, Mr. McEdwards. I'm glad they were penned up when we arrived. They could have caused no end of trouble.
They still can!
McEdwards had belted the big boy right in his enormous middle, and Roach stepped in and swung his gun. As McEdwards dropped, the dogs, penned in behind the tall fences, went crazy. Sampson, the big male, went over the 10-foot fence like it wasn't even there. Before I knew it, I was up to my elbows in Great Dane.
Sammy, let him alone! Sammy, son, get back! Hey, Delilah, get back there!
Are you all right?
Yes, I'm all right.
Mr. Dollar?
Yeah. Why didn't they go after me?
They knew you were helping.
My face. Get a doctor. Get a
This
doctor.
one's pretty bad. How's the big one?
Huh. You were right about Danes.
What do you mean?
The one you were telling me about that broke the man's neck. The fat man ran into the same sort of situation.
He's dead?
He sure is.
Well, that's the way it should be. Sampson was my son's talk.
Expense account item 2, $33.85 hotel bill. Item 3 and 4, $299.75. Car rental, plane fare, and incidentals back to Hartford. Expense account total, $527.15. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Remember, friends, Wrigley's Spearmint Chewing Gum is a refreshing, delicious treat you can enjoy just about any time. Chew a few sticks of Wrigley's Spearmint during the day and see how the good chewing helps you keep feeling fresh and alert. The lively, full-bodied flavor of Wrigley's Spearmint cools your mouth, freshens your taste, and sweetens your breath. The chewing itself gives you a nice little boost, helps you keep going at your best. Millions of people get real chewing enjoyment out of Wrigley's Spearmint Gum every day, and we know that you'll enjoy it, too. Get a few packages and always keep some handy. That's Wrigley's Spearmint Chewing Gum. Healthful, refreshing, delicious. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, brought to you by Wrigley's Spearmint Chewing Gum, stars John Lund in the title role and was written by Blake Edwards with music by Eddie Dunstetter. Featured in tonight's cast were James Nusser, John Stevenson, Jeanette Nolan, Sammy Hill, Bill James, Herb Butterfield, Robert Griffin, and Edgar Barrier. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, is produced and directed by Jaime Del Valle. The makers of Wrigley's Spearmint Chewing Gum hope you enjoyed tonight's story of Johnny Dollar and that you're enjoying delicious Wrigley's Spearmint Gum every day. This is Charles Lyon, inviting you to join us again next week at this same time when, from Hollywood, John Lund returns as...
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
This is the CBS Radio Network.
Next on WBBM, yours truly, Johnny Dollar. 47 degrees at 8 o'clock. WBBM, Chicago.
WBBM FM, Chicago.
Wrigley's Spearmint Chewing Gum, the refreshing, delicious treat that gives you chewing enjoyment, presents for your listening enjoyment John Lund as...
Johnny Dollar.
Philip Martin, Johnny.
Oh, hello, Mr. Martin.
Got a job for you.
Well, fine.
We insure a Mr. Alfred Chambers of Pittsburgh. He was shot to death yesterday.
Murder?
That's the way it looks. He'd rented a cabin in Michigan, Les Chenaux Islands.
Where's that?
About 30 miles from Sault Ste. Marie.
Right up near Canada.
Yeah, that's right. His wife found him lying in the front room of the cabin, shot through the chest. The officer handling the case is Captain George Lane, Sault Ste. Marie Police. He'll be expecting you.
I'll leave in the morning.
The makers of Wrigley's Spearmint Chewing Gum bring you John Lund in another adventure of the man with the action-packed expense account, America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Friends, the makers of Wrigley's Spearmint Gum present these weekly adventures of Johnny Dollar because they know that millions of you enjoy Johnny Dollar. That's true of Wrigley's Spearmint Chewing Gum, too. It's enjoyed by millions, day in and day out. People find that chewing on a smooth, delicious piece of Wrigley's Spearmint Gum somehow makes time pass more pleasantly. Whether you're working, driving, shopping, or just taking things easy, that good, tasty chewing gives you enjoyment and satisfaction. So always keep a package of Wrigley's Spearmint Chewing Gum handy. And whenever you want a refreshing, delicious treat, chew a stick. You'll like it. You really will.
Expense account submitted by Special Investigator Johnny Dollar to Home Office, Columbia All Risk Insurance Company, Hartford, Connecticut. The following is an accounting of expenditures during my investigation of the Alfred Chambers matter. Expense account item 1, $45.95, plane fare and incidentals between Hartford, Connecticut and Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. Expense account item 2, 75 cents, cab fare to the local police station, where I introduced myself to Captain George Lane.
Sit down, Mr. Dollar.
Oh, thanks.
Mr. Martin from your company called and told me to expect you. How can I help?
Well, to begin with, you can fill me in on the details.
Sure. You ever been to the Snows?
The Snows?
Les Cheneaux Islands.
Oh, no.
Well, there are a whole group of islands on the fringe of Lake Huron. Les Cheneaux means the channels. It's somewhat of a resort now, but very exclusive. People who go to the Snows have been coming up for years. They own homes on various islands, and altogether a very respectable community. Alfred Chambers rented the Forester cabin. It's one of the islands furthermost from the mainland, about 2 miles, I'd say. He spent 3 days in the Snows, and then his wife arrived from Pittsburgh. Mr. Schoenberg, fellow has a boat rental service, took her out to the island, and she found her husband lying in the living room, dead, shot through the chest.
Any suspects?
Not a one. Mrs. Chambers told me she'd separated from her husband about a week before he'd come to the Snows, but she couldn't have killed him. Schoenberg was with her all the time. And according to the coroner, Chambers had been dead for about 14 hours. Until the investigation's cleared up, I've been making my headquarters at the hotel at the Snows. I just came in to get the coroner's report. I was going back this afternoon if you'd care to come along.
Yeah, I'd like to. Any other homes on the island?
Yeah, several. One about a half-mile south, one on the other side of the island. This is where Mrs. Chambers found her husband.
Mm-hmm.
Lying on his face. The front door was open. He wasn't shot inside the cabin.
He wasn't?
If you didn't notice when we came in, there was some blood leading up the front steps. See? You can see where it trails in here.
Staggered in from outside,
Yeah.
huh? No electricity in the house.
No, Coleman lamps. The other 2 homes on the island have electricity and phones. But this place is nearly 60 years old. The owners never bothered to equip it with any modern conveniences.
How did Chambers get to and from the mainland?
Boat. Rented a boat from Schoenberg. When the coroner examined him, he noticed that his shoes were still damp. Later examination showed he'd been in the water, fully clothed.
It's funny.
I think he was shot probably while he was out on the dock. Fell in the water and waded to shore.
You say he'd been dead about 14 hours.
That's right. Make it about 5 in the evening when he was shot.
What time does it get dark?
Oh, up here this time of year, it doesn't get dark till about 9 o'clock. Twilight.
Shot in the chest.
Mm-hmm.
You recovered the slug?
Yeah, 22, long rifle.
Well, he was shot when it was light, and you think he was out there on the dock.
I'm pretty sure he was out there. There was a thick mud on his shoes and on the pants. Now, that mud is on the bottom out there by the dock. In close here, it's more sand. And then to get completely wet like that.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't seem likely that anyone could have shot him from the lake.
No, they'd have to be out in a boat. That'd be taking a pretty big chance.
And somebody on the island. Somewhere in the woods back there, huh?
Probably. Someone could have landed on the island any place and walked here.
Anyone hear a shot?
Yeah, I've talked with a lot of people. Some of them remember hearing a shot about that time. There's no telling where it came from. Shot on this lake, you can hear from miles.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'd like to have a talk with Mrs. Chambers.
Sure. Schoenberg can take us back to the mainland. You can drive my car over to the hotel.
Come in, Mr. Dollar.
I hope I'm not disturbing you, Mrs. Chambers.
No, not at all. Won't you sit down?
Oh, thanks. Oh, it's a beautiful view.
Yes, isn't it? Is this your first time up here?
Yes, it is.
Mine, too. And you're an insurance investigator.
Yes. My company covers both you and your husband.
Well, Mr. Dollar, just how can I help you?
Answer some questions. I know it's tough at this time.
Well, I'll be glad to tell you anything I can.
Captain Lane said that you and Mr. Chambers had separated.
Yes, that's correct.
May I ask why?
Is it absolutely necessary?
Your husband's been killed, Mrs. Chambers. Your separation might mean nothing, and then again...
Well, it was another woman.
Do you mind telling me about it?
It isn't the most pleasant subject, but I suppose you have to know. About a month ago, Al admitted that he'd been seeing this woman. He said it was serious. We argued. It was a rather nasty argument. We considered separation then, but because of the publicity, we held off.
Your husband was in the steel business, wasn't he?
Yes. And we have 2 children. Things like this happen all the time, I guess. And I can understand. I saw the girl one night. She's very attractive. Quite young. I think Al told me she was in her last year in college.
What's her name?
Oh, I don't think it was her fault. She's young, and my husband was certainly a very attractive man. I don't think it was either of their faults, really. Things like that happen. It would be a shame to involve her now.
She's already involved. This looks like murder. Anyone connected with your husband is involved. What's her name?
Jane Elkins. I've never met her, but my husband told me she's a lovely girl, from a fine family. A week ago, I wouldn't have cared whether or not she was involved in a scandal, but now... Oh, certainly I've suffered enough, and it'll be a terrible thing for my children. I thought a lot about the girl after I found Al. I hoped that perhaps she might be spared.
She lives in Pittsburgh?
Yes.
Your husband left Pittsburgh when?
A week ago today. He decided to take his vacation alone, think things over.
Why did you come up here?
Well, I thought things over too, Mr. Dollar. I decided to give Al his freedom. I talked with our lawyer, and he suggested I have one more talk with Al. I left the next morning.
Did you tell your husband you were coming up?
No. There was no way of reaching him. There's no phone on the island. The letter would have gotten here after I did.
So you just packed and came up, huh?
Yes. I only packed one bag. I wasn't planning on staying.
When did you leave Pittsburgh?
The morning of the 18th.
You arrived the next morning?
Oh, I arrived at the Sioux that night. I came to the Snows the next morning.
You've never been here before?
No.
How did you know how to find the cabin where your husband was staying?
Well, I simply asked the man who runs the boats. I asked him to take me to the Forester's cabin.
I see. Can you think of anyone who might want to kill your husband?
A week ago. I thought about it.
Anyone else?
No. My husband was well-liked, Mr. Dollar. He was a very respected man.
No business troubles?
Oh, no.
How long has it been since your husband was up here?
Oh, well, let's see. He always used to talk about it. He used to tell the children he'd show them pictures. Oh, I guess it's about 10 years ago. Yes, I think it was about that long before we were married.
Well, Mrs. Chambers?
Oh, must you go?
I have to get back to Captain Lane. I've got his car.
The captain asked me to stay until he finishes his investigation.
Yes, sir.
I don't know anyone here. I was hoping you might have dinner with me. There's very good food, a pleasant dining room.
Well, thank you very much, Mrs. Chambers, but I...
Excuse me. Yes? Yes. By all means, come right up.
Well, I'll be going, Mrs. Chambers.
I think you should stay, Mr. Dollar.
Hmm?
That phone call was from the lobby. It was Miss Jane Elkins.
Friends, Wrigley's Spearmint Chewing Gum is a refreshing, delicious treat you can enjoy just about any time. Even when you're busy working, you can slip a stick of Wrigley's Spearmint in your mouth and enjoy the pleasant chewing. The lively, full-bodied spearmint flavor cools your mouth and freshens your taste. The good, smooth chewing helps relieve pent-up tension, gives you satisfaction. As a result, you seem to feel more relaxed and get more enjoyment out of what you're doing. So enjoy chewing Wrigley's Spearmint Gum while you work, and at other times, too. Get a few packages next time you're at the store. That's Wrigley's Spearmint Chewing Gum. Healthful, refreshing, delicious. And now, with our star, John Lund, we bring you the second act of Yours Truly, Johnny Dollar.
Jane Elkins, the woman who had caused the separation between Mrs. Chambers and her husband, had called from the hotel lobby. Jane Elkins, the Pittsburgh college student, had suddenly turned up at Les Chenauds.
Mrs. Chambers?
Yes. Come in.
We've never met, but
My husband told me about you. This is Mr. Dollar.
How do you do?
Hello, Miss Elkins.
I'm sorry. I didn't know you had company.
That's quite all right. When you called, I asked Mr. Dollar to stay. He's investigating my husband's death.
Oh?
Sit down, Miss Elkins. Please.
Thank you.
I must say your call certainly surprised me.
When I heard you were in town, I thought about calling you sooner, but... Well,
I understand.
You were in town when Mrs. Chambers arrived, Miss Elkins?
Oh, yes. I came up with some friends. They have a home on one of the islands. Mrs. Chambers, I didn't know Mr. Chambers was coming up here.
You didn't?
Mrs. Chambers, I wasn't in love with your husband. I never have been. I must admit that for a while I thought perhaps I was.
You didn't know Mr. Chambers was coming up here?
I had no idea until he arrived.
How long had you been here before Mr. Chambers arrived?
Nearly a week.
You told him you were coming up?
Yes. I told him I wasn't sure about... I said I wanted to come up and think for a while.
Where were you when Mr. Chambers was killed?
I don't know. I don't know just when he was killed. I heard about it. Let's see, Wednesday in the afternoon.
When was the last time you saw him?
I saw him Tuesday afternoon. That was the last time. He came into Cedarville. I met him at the drugstore. We talked, and he went back to the island.
Had you seen him much before that? While you were up here, I mean?
Yes, I saw him twice. Shortly after he arrived, and one time after that at the post office. Mrs. Chambers, when he arrived and we met, I told him I'd rather not see him while I was up here. The people I'm staying with know Mr. Chambers. They're from Pittsburgh also.
Do I know them?
The Weatherwaxes?
Oh, yes.
You see, before I met your husband, I was engaged to their son, Charles.
Is he here in the Snows?
Yes, we all drove up together.
Does he know about you and Mr. Chambers?
Yes.
Did he know that Mr. Chambers was here in town?
Yes, I told him.
How did he take it?
Not too well, I'm afraid.
Miss Elkins, before my husband arrived, had you come to any decision?
Yes. Maybe you won't believe it, but it's true.
When your husband arrived, I told him... I said I thought it would be best if we forgot the whole thing. I wasn't in love with him, Mrs. Chambers. Not really.
Miss Elkins, after Mr. Chambers left you that last time in the afternoon, what did you do?
I went back to the house.
Where was Charles? Was he at the house?
No, I don't think so. No, he was out. Mr. Dollar, you weren't suggesting...
Just a simple question. Where was Charles?
He was out in the boat.
Alone? Was he alone?
I don't know.
Well, it's easy to find out.
Mr. Dollar, if you'll excuse me, I really must be going.
Oh, that's too bad.
Will you forgive me if I run now, Mrs. Chambers? Charles' parents are giving a cocktail party this afternoon in my honor. I'm in anything but a party mood, but there was no way I could get out of it. That is, without telling the weather waxers about...
Yes, I understand. You run along. Thank you for coming to see me.
Oh, Mrs. Chambers, if I could only tell you how sorry I am about everything.
I know. Goodbye, my dear.
After Jane Elkins left, I talked with Mrs. Chambers for a few minutes more, then made my excuses and drove to the Cedarville Hotel and registered there. I reported my findings to Captain Lane, who said he'd check on Jane Elkins and her boyfriend. Then I stretched out on the bed and tried to figure my next move. Well, it didn't take long to figure. I decided to crash the Weatherwax's cocktail party. Expense account item 3, $1.50, boat rental and Schoenberg services as pilot. We made it in 15 minutes. Schoenberg pulled into a long dock where a veritable armada of small craft were tied up. The party was well underway. The guests were milling around on a long strip of white beach about 50 yards below a huge Georgian house. No one asked to see my invitation, so I grabbed a drink from a passing tray and looked around for Jane Elkins. I spotted her a few yards away talking to a stout, mustached party with a rich bourbon complexion. I stepped briskly up to her side. Jane Elkins, I presume?
What? Oh.
Jane, I wonder if I could have a word with you. Old man, you won't mind if I steal the guest of honor from you, will you?
Mind? I certainly do mind. I wouldn't think it... Say, don't I know you? Aren't you Robinson Plumbing Supply?
No, I'm Dollar. Insurance.
Oh, insurance? Oh, well, excuse me. I'll see you later, Jane.
That always empties the hall in a hurry.
What are you doing here?
I've got a lot of questions that need answers.
I don't want to make a scene, but if you don't leave this instant, I'll have you thrown out.
You might as well talk to me as to the police. I'm a lot more sympathetic.
The police?
Yeah, the police. Now just give me some answers and I'll be on my way.
What do you want to know?
Well, that's better. What time did your fiancé come back here yesterday?
I'm not sure. I think it was around 6:30.
Mm-hmm. By the way, could you point him out to me?
He's standing over there by the bar, the man in the green jacket.
Well, he's a big one, isn't he? Now, Miss Elkins, what time did you return here yesterday?
About 4 o'clock?
4 o'clock. You stayed here the rest of the afternoon?
Yes.
Where were you?
Where?
Were you in the house?
You surely can't think that
Take it easy. Charles is heading this way.
Please go.
Oh, not yet. Charles is the man I'd like most to meet.
You two seem to be having a fascinating conversation. Mind if I butt in?
Oh, butt away, Mr. Weatherwax. My name is Dollar.
How do you do, Mr. Dollar?
Fine, thank you. If you're through with my hand now, I'd like it back.
How's that, Mr. Dollar?
I might want to use it again sometime.
Oh, sorry. Well, here, you can have it back.
Thanks. Now, let me give you a tip. Next time you try that bone-crushing bit, watch out for a left hook.
Jane, just who is this little friend of yours?
He's not a friend.
Oh, no, not a friend. Something much more than that. Much closer. Much warmer.
Get out of here, Dollar, or so help me, I'll break you in two. I'll scatter you all over the beach.
All right, Mr. Weatherwax. I'll go. You told me what I wanted to know. You're a jealous man and a violent man. The perfect type.
What are you talking about?
Charles, he's a detective. He's investigating Alfred's death.
Oh, why didn't you say so, Dollar?
I'm not answering today. I'm asking. For instance, where were you yesterday afternoon? And do you own a .22 rifle? Chambers was killed with a .22. The slug can be traced to the rifle it was fired from. They call it ballistics. Isn't science wonderful? Goodbye, Charles. Schoenberg and I took off from LaSalle Island, but instead of heading for Cedarville, we turned into an inlet about a half-mile down the lake where we could still see the Weatherwax dock. We waited there for 10 minutes. Then Charles Weatherwax appeared on the landing. He climbed into a small cruiser and headed south. He cruised to a spot about 300 yards off the shore of Baxter's Island, hove to, stripped down to bathing trunks, put on a pair of underwater goggles, and dived in. He came up seconds later and then submerged once more. I told Schoenberg to pull up to him at top speed. When Charles surfaced again, he saw us bearing down on him and climbed hastily back into the boat. But before he could weigh anchor, we were alongside. Don't leave just yet, Charles. This is a gun in my hand.
Yeah, I see it.
Spear fishing without a spear, huh? What kind of fish are you after, Charles? All right. Start it up and head for the landing. And don't get reckless, Charles. I'm a fair shot. All right, Charles. All ashore that's going ashore.
We regret this, Dollar.
All right. Let's go up toward the house. We can talk better there. Come on, move, Charles. Move. This is far enough. All right, talk, Charles. What were you looking for out there in the sky blue water?
I don't have to tell you anything.
If you'd rather talk to Captain Lane, it's all right with me. But why not tell me? It'll look a little better on the record.
I didn't kill Chambers, but I was with him when he was killed.
Go on.
I came over to tell him to stay away from Jane.
But Jane said that she'd broken with him that same afternoon.
Yeah, but I didn't know that then. We were standing out on the dock, he and I, talking. There was a shot, and he fell in the water.
And you just left him there?
Well, he was dead.
Oh, I'm afraid not. He made it to the cabin.
Oh, I thought he was dead. I got panicky. I realized how bad it looked. Ran to my boat and took off. Then I remembered I had a .22 rifle in the cabin. I threw it overboard. Then today you made the crack about ballistics. It came to me what I'd done. I'd thrown away the one piece of evidence that would clear me. So I came back to find it.
Well, it's a good story, but I don't buy it. I think you're... For a big man, he was very fast. He dived at me suddenly in a flying tackle, and I went over backward. I managed to kick loose from his grip, but the gun had been jolted out of my hand. He scooped it up and pointed it at my head. I jumped at him. He went over backward. I went over with him, grabbed the gun from his hand, and then stood up. Much the worse for wear.
You're pretty fast, Dollar.
Tell me something. Why didn't you fire? You had plenty of time. Why not? Maybe you're just not the shooting type. Maybe that tall story you told was true.
It is true.
Well, maybe I believe you. The only trouble is, if you didn't kill him, there's a good chance that Jane did.
Are you crazy?
Oh, I don't think so. Besides you, she's the only person I know of who had both motive and opportunity and no alibi.
Oh, you're raving mad. What motive would she have to kill him?
She says she told Chambers Tuesday that it was all over between them.
She did.
She says she did. But suppose it was the other way around. Suppose he jilted her. Ever hear the line about a woman scorned?
All right. All right, I killed him. I didn't know that Jane had broken up with him. He got nasty, and I shot him.
I see. Where were you when you shot him?
I was... What difference does that make? I tell you, I killed him. Take me into the mainland, I'll make a full confession.
Okay. If you say so.
I say...
Hey! That was a rifle shot. Came from over there beyond those trees.
Yeah.
Come on, let's go, halfback. You first. We ran through the grove of fir trees and came to a little cove not more than 200 yards off. A rowboat was pulled up on the beach, and beside it was a small boy with a .22 rifle.
Hi,
Hi. What's your name?
Jimmy Bishop. What's yours?
You live over on Fire Island, don't you?
Yeah?
What were you shooting at just now?
Squirrels. Oh, they're all right to shoot. My father says they're pests.
You come here often to shoot?
Once in a while.
Were you here Tuesday afternoon around 5 o'clock?
Yeah, sure. I got 2 squirrels.
I'm afraid that wasn't all you got, Sonny. Well, that's the way things work out sometimes. You think you've got a cold-blooded murder on your hands, and it turns out to be a young kid who shouldn't have been given a gun on his birthday. The .22 was checked by the ballistics department and proved to be the one that had fired the fatal shot. At the inquest, the jury returned a verdict of accidental manslaughter. However, it's doubtful if young Jimmy Bishop will ever want another gun as long as he lives. Expense account item 4, $22 for hotel bill and transportation back to the Sioux Airport. Expense account item 5, $43.85, plane fare and incidentals back to Hartford. Expense account total, $114.05. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Remember, friends, Wrigley's Spearmint Chewing Gum is a refreshing, delicious treat you can enjoy just about any time. Chew a few sticks of Wrigley's Spearmint during the day and see how the good chewing helps you keep feeling fresh and alert. The lively, full-bodied flavor of Wrigley's Spearmint Gum cools your mouth, freshens your taste, and sweetens your breath. The chewing itself gives you a nice little boost, helps you keep going at your best. Millions of people get real chewing enjoyment out of Wrigley's Spearmint Gum every day. And we know that you'll enjoy it, too. Get a few packages and always keep some handy. That's Wrigley's Spearmint Chewing Gum. Healthful, refreshing, delicious. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, brought to you by Wrigley's Spearmint Chewing Gum, stars John Lund in the title role and was written by Blake Edwards with music by Eddie Dunstetter. Featured in tonight's cast were Hal March, Marvin Miller, Jeanette Nolan, Jane Webb, and Dick Beals. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, is produced and directed by Jaime Del Valle. The makers of Wrigley's Spearmint Chewing Gum hope you enjoyed tonight's story of Johnny Dollar and that you're enjoying delicious Wrigley's Spearmint Gum every day. This is Charles Lyon, inviting you to join us again next week at this same time when, from Hollywood, John Lund returns as...
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
This is the CBS Radio Network.